Ladies and gentlemen, we are back on another episode with none other than Joe Gray, Reddit moderator for our home gym, and he is actually the founder of the Garage Gym competition. This man squats 500 pounds, just squats, not total. That's a crazy number for those of us who don't know. And I think he might just beat my total just with his squats. So now to you, Joe. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, man. And technically, it is 550, but yeah.
Modest too. I love this guy.
Yeah.
So, Joe, our show is kind of going to go in the garage gym direction, and there's a lot to talk about, especially with COVID. But, I want to know about you, how you got here, becoming a moderator on a community that has 226,000 individuals as of the date that we're recording. How does one even go to there? So I'm going to throw it way back childhood wise, and this is a huge jump, but I want you to kind of tell me your story, any significant life events, and then we'll go from there and transition to today.
Sure. So grew up in Northern California. I've born, raised, always lived here. Different towns, but same general area. Always enjoyed it. Never felt like I needed to live anywhere else. I've traveled to different places, but always ended up back here. As a kid, I played sports like crazy. So soccer, baseball, basketball were the three that I played on a regular basis.
Huge.
I played competitive basketball for quite a while.
Wow.
Was on 2 or 3 different teams. I played quite a bit of baseball, winter ball kinds of stuff. So I was always on at least one team, if not two, throughout most of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
At a certain point, dropped soccer. Then at a certain point, dropped basketball, and then dropped baseball. And then in high school, so right now I'm 6 foot tall and about 240. In high school, I was, as a freshman, like 5'2" or so.
Wow.
So
That growth spurt, though.
yeah, I was a little chunky, and so I had trouble when it came to basketball, keeping up. Just the physicality, I just didn't have it. I was always athletic, and what I typically would say is I believe I was a little bit smarter, like intellectually, like I could see things happening before it happened. As a point guard, I like to control the floor more and everything. I wasn't faster than everyone, but I could work my way into everything. Yeah, exactly. So as a baseball player, for the large majority, I was a catcher. So same thing. You got to be smart. You got to be, in it. You got to know what's going on, the whole deal. So both mentally and physically tough. So yeah, and then in high school I played volleyball.
Volleyball.
Friends of mine played volleyball. Because I didn't make the basketball team, I said, okay, well, I want to play something.
Right.
And went out for volleyball, really liked it. I played in the back row, so I was a defensive specialist, passing, serving, things like that, as opposed to getting up and hitting and crushing stuff and blocking shots and whatnot. So, and then throughout high school, I grew. I came back, I think, for a alumni game as a freshman in college. And my coach was like, who the hell is this guy? Grew it like 4 or 5 inches, put on like 20 pounds of muscle and whatever else. And so,
yeah, Joe, let me just kind of interrupt you. Sorry about that. But like, when did you have this growth spurt? Because 5'2" to 6 foot is like a dream for so many guys. Like when did this happen?
So freshman year, 5'2", sophomore, I think I was like 5'6" or 7. Junior year was another maybe 2 inches, and then it was just kind of like 2 inches every year for a while there till I hit 6 foot. So, I actually the freshman basketball coach wanted me to be his like stat guy.
Mm.
and said like, you can come, you can practice with us, you can do all that kind of stuff. You just won't play. And I went,
Brutal.
that doesn't sound interesting. No, thank you. I always kind of figured I wasn't going to be a professional athlete.
Mm.
So I just kind of said, no, I'll find something else to do, especially the time commitment to do all of that and then to not get anything out of it just wasn't
Right.
my thing. When I came back sophomore year and he saw me and I was 4 inches taller and he was like, hey, are you going to try out for the JV team? And I was like, nah,
Oh
I already moved
man.
on. Thank you. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, growing up, sports, like I said, were always a big thing. So
Hmm.
my dad played tons of sports. My mom did not.
Yeah.
So my dad's stance was always, if I got my mom's athleticism, he was going to give me back. My dad coached a lot of my sports when I was younger. He had a lot of
Huge.
health. He had a lot of health problems. He was in Vietnam.
Oh wow.
So he had cancers and different things like that. He ended up passing
Wow.
away when I was in sixth grade. He had had a stroke when I was in fourth grade, and then a second one in sixth grade. And then it was just me and my mom. And my mom worked. She took me to everything. I mean, I
Wow.
know we never skipped a beat. Like I was, yeah.
Shout out to your mom, Joe.
She went straight from having someone with her to not to she did it all. So she now helps with my daughter. So she comes down 3 days a week and watches her while I do whatever else I'm doing for work and things like that. So, but yeah, that's kind of my childhood, my upbringing, things that
Yeah.
happened and whatnot. I went off to a
College.
community college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Local community college, struggled, had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a pilot for a little bit. Didn't like it.
Pilot.
Yeah.
Squad on the airplane, eh?
Yeah. Then tried computer programming because I liked video games.
Right.
Hated that.
Yeah.
The idea of spending hours on something and then a comma being one place, to the left or something, and it's
Man.
screwing the whole thing up.
Yeah.
It was too much for me.
Yeah.
So that was done. Pair the idea of not knowing what I wanted to do, trying a few different things with being having this idea in my head that college was going to be like different than
Yeah.
high school and stuff,
Yeah.
and then I have to take more English and more math and more of all this other stuff, and
Mhm.
I did not have the motivation to do any of it, and finding out that the way that you kind of get coddled or babied a little bit throughout, high school
Yeah.
and junior high and whatnot, just goes away when you hit college. All
When did
those
you realize that? Like, what was the moment that you realized that they're not going to take care of you like they did in high school?
When I started getting really bad grades. I was on academic probation for the
Yeah.
first, I think, year.
Hmm.
Like I said, the terrible combination of let me try programming. This sucks. Let me try this. I don't want to do that anymore. Let me
Hmm.
like all of it just combined for really bad. I think my first semester was like a B, two C's, an incomplete, and a D or something like that.
Okay.
Just bad. And I was a 3.0 plus student in high school, so
Right.
not a star student, but certainly did not struggle.
For sure.
Ended up trying business. Had a really, really cool business teacher, and ended up taking everything he offered and went
Wow.
that route. And ended up going to CSU Chico, where I got my bachelor's in human resources. So I actually
Fantastic.
transferred up there in marketing. So that was the
Right.
teacher that I had in the beginning. He was a marketing guy.
Sweet.
Hated my marketing teacher, Chico.
Oh
Really,
man.
really liked my HR teacher. And my two roommates who went with me were two of my best friends. They did the same thing. They went up there thinking they were going to do marketing, hated it, switched to HR. So all three of us got our degrees in HR together,
Wow.
and yeah, and then kind of went from there. I got a really crappy job locally.
Yep.
Actually, first out of college, I got a job at Best Buy, just working in the
Yep.
warehouse because I couldn't find anything.
Right.
Was lucky enough to live with my mom, so I didn't have huge expenses, but I needed to pay for gas. I needed
Yep.
sorts of stuff. Um, Went and ended up getting a job at a recruiting agency, making I don't know, like $12 an hour or something
Hmm.
like that, with a 4-year degree and no benefits and the whole deal. It was
College
bad.
expenses.
Yeah, nowhere near what you would need to pay for any kind of a life. So
Yep.
luckily, I did not have any college debt. I didn't have,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it that was plans and help from my mom and all kinds of stuff. So lot of things worked out in my favor to allow me to be able to take that really low paying job to get my foot in the door,
Yep.
which then led to me getting a job at the next company, which was a bank that I really liked working for. I was there for 9 years until they got bought out,
Yeah.
which I currently work at the company that bought them out. But
Wow.
working there was huge. So I got into the training department for HR, and my experience I didn't really think I was going to stay in
Hmm.
training. I thought it was going to be my foot in the door for HR. It ended up being me finding a passion for learning and helping people and growing and developing, and all kinds of stuff. So there was a lot of work in me trying to uh, so uh, working with a guy who had his PhD, encouraged me to then go back to school and get my master's. He helped me actually pick the school that I wanted to be at,
Mm.
the kind of degree path I wanted to go down, all that stuff. The company invested a lot in culture and like personal accountability. We talked about Myers Briggs and different personality type stuff and
Huge.
communication skills and all kinds of things that I got to be actually involved in the background, of developing and tweaking and learning from the master, right? The guy who's actually going to teach all this stuff and being able to pick his ear on a daily basis. He's a really good friend of mine. Even running our company's performance management process is a big piece that I carry over to the gym stuff. So being able to set goals and targets and measure them appropriately, how to adjust and shift when things don't work,
Yeah.
how to set short-term goals, long-term goals, how to meld those two together. All that stuff comes from the last, almost decade of working in HR, in the training, and the development department, and being surrounded by the people that I've been surrounded by. So,
Wow. Well,
yeah.
Joe, like that's a crazy experience, and a lot of people come out of college and finding that first job is such a struggle, and going through that and still persevering, and then finding that great job, finding that great team, which seems to be, that seems to be like your flavor, like you went to your first community college, found a great marketing teacher. I'm doing marketing.
Yeah.
Then you go to Chico. You know what? This marketing teacher, not the best. I'm going to go to HR because the teacher is amazing. And it's
Yeah.
oftentimes that, we don't really a lot of people don't appreciate like when a teacher is amazing, but the impact they can have on one's life can literally change course. And I think we've had a example with that for you. One thing I wanted to ask you, Joe, because we briefly touched upon the gym, but we haven't even got to like how that started. Like, when did you start hitting the gym yourself?
Leaving high school, volleyball was done. I didn't have any other sports that I was tied into at that point.
Yeah,
And I needed something physical to keep me active, engaged, the whole deal.
yeah,
My best friend had just started going to a local gym, and he's like, "Hey, you need to come with me." And I said, "Okay, sure, why not?" So I had lifted on and off for sports in the past, but
Yep.
nothing consistent. It was always like, "Oh, next week we're gonna hit the weights," and we do that for a week or something in the off season or whatever.
Right.
I had done some miscellaneous stuff when I was younger for similar reasons, off-season training for basketball, whatever,
Right.
but nothing that was like hitting the weight
Structured and program.
for the sake of hitting weights
Hmm.
or, and yeah, no structured program, no nothing.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. Neither did he really. We were pulling random stuff off the internet,
Oh yeah.
doing what I tell people a lot of times. I've probably done more wrong in the last decade and a half than I have right.
Yep.
So the one consistency, the one thing that's worked for me the whole time is I just showed up. So
Mm.
from the point of probably when I turned 18 until today, I've shown up to the gym at least once or twice a week
Huge.
forever, right?
Huge.
So,
Joe,
and that
I just want to kind of interrupt you there. Sorry about that. But, showing up to the gym, that's such a key, and a lot of people aren't able to do that. We have a bunch of New Year's resolutioners, and I'm not sure if you've seen any of the memes. I have, but like people all buy their membership. January is the worst month, and then February it all trickles down to like 25 to 50%. Then they all go away. What was your, motivating factor for going to the gym that kept you that consistent?
it's hard for me because the concept of building habits seems to be fairly easy for me
Mhm. How
in
so?
that so if I look at my core values, one of my key pieces is logic.
Logic.
And so there's a lot of other like underlying aspects to I think who I am. So things around honesty and transparency and whatever else. But when I roll a lot of those up into like one, logic tends to be the key piece.
Hmm.
And so the reason why, an easy way to explain it is my wife has said before, you're so logical, it hurts. Uh, so times where she's like, "What if we did whatever she comes up with?" And I
Yeah.
go, "In one real quick thing, have you thought about this?" Oh, you just ruined the whole plan. Like I spent a week coming up
Oh
with
my
that or
god.
whatever. And so I do that all the time at work. Like I just crush people's hopes and dreams with one short, very quick line. So
Rational thought.
yeah. But
How'd that apply to the gym?
so for me, it wasn't hard to convince myself that showing up on a regular basis and doing something that was good for me was a good thing to do.
For
Um,
sure.
and then once I've decided that it's a thing that I should do, I just continue to do it.
Huge.
The hardest part over the years has been sifting through all of the nonsense and the fads and the everything. I mean, I've
Mm.
tried it all. When I first came up lifting, like I said, I didn't know anything, so I listened to my buddy and we read stuff, and everyone was doing like Mr. Olympia workouts where you do every machine in the gym,
Oh, classic.
and then you'd leave and you'd hurt for days,
Yeah.
and then after that, it was okay. Well, machines are bad.
Yep.
That was the whole CrossFit era of stuff. Don't touch machines; they're
Mhm.
bad. They're going to hurt you. And I know that they feel good or whatever, but you got to do all this free weight stuff.
Yeah.
And then now I think, and maybe it's just the people I listen to, but I think we're in a much more neutral place
Mhm.
where a lot of people are saying nothing is good or bad inherently. It's a balance. It's knowing where are you going, what are you trying to accomplish, understanding your past injuries and
Dude,
structures and whatever it might be. So,
absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, going to the gym was never hard for me.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things about starting early, I see a lot of people. This comes up on Reddit all the time. Is people struggle to include it into their routine once they've got two kids and a full-time job and a wife who wants some of their time, and
Mhm.
they've got another hobby of this and whatever. I was
Huge.
already lifting regularly 3, 4, 5 times a week when I met my wife, so girlfriend at the time, when I
Mhm.
was going to school, when I was working and
Yeah.
everything. So the idea of me spending an hour a day in the gym is just very normal. That's just who I am. It always has been. And so I see people, struggle, and the cynical response from my end is, they say, well, how do I get my wife and all these people to buy in? And I'm like, start 10 years ago, and then you'll be good, right? Like,
I love it. I
obviously
love
that's not helpful at all. So I don't typically actually post that, but
That's a logical side of you coming out though, and that brings up a couple of good points that I just want to touch upon. You know, Joe, you're talking about being very logical and from the beginning. If you value lifting, if you value home gyms, you want to pick a partner that values that too, because they need to understand that that's a part of your life,
yep,
and you need to enjoy your time with them. So if there's one activity that you guys have in common that you're both passionate about,
yeah,
huge check mark. And, I just want to kind of quickly touch upon a point that you mentioned before, Joe. I'm actually a kinesiologist. I just recently graduated a year ago, about. And one of the things about the machines versus the open weights is the machines are in some ways easier because, there's no balance component, there's no coordination. All of your accessory muscles that are just stabilizing aren't working.
yep,
And that's good for a lot of people with injuries. But I think for the general public, if they're able to go with free weights, not only can they do a lot more exercise with just a barbell at a cheaper price, but it works a lot more stabilizing muscles that are more like how people use their body in real life.
yep,
So I think that's a huge point that, a lot of people have to consider.
yep.
So yeah, Joe, I mean, I guess one transition that we can give is, you picked your wife for one logical reason was the fact that she loved the gym. I'm sure there's many others.
Yeah.
And how did you go about starting this garage gym thing? Because, going to the gym is one thing, but the garage gym community is something that's accelerated a lot during COVID for reasons because every single gym's pretty much closed
Yeah.
all around the world. But you started early. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So during college, when I was lifting regularly, my program looked really simple, and even a few years after, it was show up, maybe do like a machine or two at most,
Mm,
but it was mostly squats, bench,
huge.
deadlift, overhead press, that kind of stuff. It was, I mean,
Starting
if you're
strength
going to do, yeah,
computing,
and it wasn't that exactly, but it was,
similar.
forms of that, yeah. If you were gonna, break down the total, time spent, it was probably 90% under a bar and 10% else.
Machines. Yeah.
So I had thought, man, I'm literally driving to and from a gym. I'm paying a membership, etc., to use their bar plates, rack, and bench. Like that's it. Like that's all I'm doing over and over and over again. And I was getting frustrated with having, gyms that had one deadlift platform, if you're lucky, had,
Oh,
one or two racks, if you're lucky. Up in Chico, the gym I went to was actually owned by an ex powerlifter.
wow.
So he was a little tiny guy, but just strong as hell. And so they had a legit like two or three deadlift platforms.
Right.
They had chalk bowls. They had good bars. They didn't force you to use bumper plates on the deadlift platform
Wow.
because they knew like, yeah, you're lifting heavy weights. That's why we put down the extra mats. That's the whole purpose, right? They had, I think, two or three actual squat racks, and then a couple of other spots that you could do that in if you needed
Wow.
to. They had 2 or 3 like legit flat benches, and so full thing of dumbbells, the whole deal. It was great.
That sounds like my gym. Let's
Yeah, I mean,
go.
I don't even remember if there was any machines or not. I think it was just almost all free weights and then a couple of cardio pieces.
Huge.
And so left there, came down back to more or less where we are now, where I lived with my now wife, so girlfriend, our apartment, and the gym was your pseudo more typical, big commercial gym. 70% was dedicated to
Cardio.
various cardio,
Oh,
another
classic.
20% to various machines, and then 10% was, dumbbells and a few racks. We did luck out in that because they were trying to stay with the current trends. They did have 3 Olympic lifting platforms that
Wow.
had half racks attached that I could squat, I could bench, and I could deadlift on.
Yeah.
I
Joe,
had
just before we keep going on, a lot of our viewers probably don't know the difference between a half rack and a full rack, and I recently learned about a year ago. So do you mind explaining it to us?
Yeah, so a full rack is the easiest way is how many posts it has.
Mm.
So a full rack you typically say has like 4 posts. So you're essentially squatting inside of a box,
Hmm.
or, like a cube. And the nice thing there is you've got safeties. So in case you miss a lift, that run from one side to the other, as opposed to the half racks that they had there are kind of squatting out in the open.
Hmm.
So you had safeties, but they weren't very long. You kind of had to
Hmm.
stay really close to the half rack to make it work. But
Right.
it's just 2 posts that are drilled down into the floor, and you have the whole free thing open. It was the right setup for them because again, they wanted the Olympic lifting.
Yep.
They were trying to attract that pseudo CrossFit group.
Yep.
But it worked. It worked for me until they then decided they were going to run classes there, and so they were like taping that section off at different
For
times.
the racks?
Yeah, the whole
Oh,
section.
what?
They had it set up to where they were doing these like kids classes or these, like I said, CrossFit style classes. I say, CrossFit with the quotes because it wasn't CrossFit. They were changing their rules around deadlifts. Like you couldn't deadlift on the platform. They wanted you to deadlift over in the corner somewhere, which was
How does
extra.
that make sense?
It was nonsense. So
So too many crazy rules. I feel like we're
yeah,
going somewhere.
yeah, it worked for a little bit longer, but I knew in the back of my head I had done for a while the math that said if I bought my equipment when I had a garage, I would save money in the long term and save time and energy and frustration and the whole deal. Then we get to the point where the gyms start adding in all this other garbage. And then I'm like, okay, now I not only have the like logical math financial decision, I also have the just logistical nightmare of trying to do the things that I want to do in the gym and not having it happen.
Hmm.
So, you know, so many dominoes start piling up and falling for why this should happen. We move to our house. So we
Yep.
buy a house. It's on the other side of town. So now it's a 30 to 45 minute long commute to get to the gym and back.
Congrats,
Um,
by the way. That's a huge achievement.
yeah, I'm having to do it after work. So it's, 5 or 6 o'clock. I'm going to the gym. I'm coming back. I'm not getting home until like 7.
Hmm.
And then my wife is going to start nursing school, and then
Hmm.
I'm talking about looking at a master's, and we're
Yep.
like, all right, there's just not enough time in the day to fit all of these things. Something has to give.
Hmm.
And so we finally said, okay, let's buy the gym. So my mom hops in again. I borrow some money from her. I buy my rack, my bars, those kinds of things, and get it all set up. I
Right.
actually started with what I call my pilot test. So I
What was
bought
that?
I bought a bar and about 500 pounds of plates off of Craigslist, and then 2 horse stall mats. And once a week, I would deadlift at home. So instead of going to the gym, I deadlift. And
Huge.
that was my way of saying, like, is this going to work? Can I stay consistent? Like, how's it feel? That kind of stuff.
Huge.
So,
And just so our viewers know, horse stall mats are like the hidden gem of the Reddit community that Joe moderates. And essentially it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but it's mats that were usually used for horses in their horse stalls, hence what they're called. But they're essentially multi-purpose mats that you usually use for platforms, or even if you're deadlifting on a place and it's like 100 pounds for a 4x6. It absorbs the weight. There's nothing to worry about. And if you like your hardwood, definitely get that.
yeah, they're 3/4 inch thick, as opposed to a lot of times the gym stuff is like a 1/4 inch.
Mm,
And as soon as you say it's for a gym as opposed to a horse, right? So no one's gonna buy or spend a lot of money for a horse to stand on, pee on, poop on,
hmm
do whatever. But people will spend absurd amounts of money to make their gym look pretty. So it costs drastically less. I think I covered the whole half of my garage for like $200, as
Huge.
opposed to it'd be like 1,000 or something like that if I bought it gym stuff. There's a few downsides there. I think it's typically recycled rubber, so that it does tend to lose little pieces here and there. There's seams, so in the winter and in the summer they shrink a little bit and whatnot. So you may have little cracks that run. There's ways different people have come out with to handle that. So they'll use
Yeah.
Gorilla Tape down the seams to keep the seams from showing up. What I do with mine works pretty well, where I don't want the mats to slide since I only use half of the garage. So I have a 1x2 that runs as a like a border all the way around,
Mm,
concrete anchored into the ground. So now all of the mats stay in place instead of
huge.
slip and slide and whatnot. So there's a lot of different solutions,
Yeah.
yeah. So the gym kept doing all kinds of stuff. We bought our equipment, and it just went from there. It was a pretty seamless, easy transition for me. Like I said, I wasn't really using much besides the bar, the weights, the bench, that kind of stuff. My wife tinkered around a little bit for a while in the gym, and then it was really hard for her to be consistent while she went to school. So she was a CNA, so it's a certified nurse assistant, while going to school. So school was Monday through Thursday. Work was Friday, Saturday, I
Wow.
think, and then
Mad
Sunday.
props.
Yeah, and the work was 12-hour shifts. So she also had to, on top of that, do all her homework and studying and the whole deal. And so
Huge
that was
props.
a gnarly 2 years for her. And then we decided for some crazy reason to overlap. So her 2 years of nursing school was my 1 year, like first year of master's, and then the second year of my master's.
How was that?
Uh, it worked.
It worked.
We didn't have kids, so that was
Right.
helpful. We were both steady in our jobs. We both had luckily very supportive jobs. So where she
Huge.
worked, they knew she was going to be a nurse and then be a nurse there. So they supported her. They helped her with her schedule, the whole deal.
Hmm.
My boss and my boss's boss and a bunch of people around me have their masters, and they knew I was going to get it and I was going to work there. We both had tuition reimbursement at our companies.
Wow.
So I got $5,250 a year paid for my master's. She
Wow.
got the same thing. So I don't think she had any out of pocket expenses for nursing school.
Wow.
Paid for a $25,000 degree, like $4,000 out of pocket. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. So
Huge.
um, I, uh, what I will say every single day is that I have been fortunate enough to have a lot of opportunities that I then took advantage of. So I'm not gonna try and shortchange myself and say like, oh, it was easy. Like my
Hmm.
master's was hard. That was a lot of work, and to do it while lifting, while working,
Working.
it's not like they said, oh, you're getting your master's, don't worry about that project.
Yeah.
Like it was still, I mean, I still had all the same requirements. It
Mhm.
was working until 6 or whatever, and then coming home and then doing an hour or two of studying and reading and writing
Mhm.
and the whole deal.
Yeah.
The only days we got off typically together where we tried to keep completely clear was Sunday. But
Yeah.
because I got my degree online, you still have, I mean, you have to check in every day to be able to comment and, work together and
Hmm.
the whole deal. So, I mean,
It,
it was a lot of work. But
it,
again, the opportunity was made available to me. I think
yeah.
that's a piece,
Yeah.
key piece
And
for me. So,
yeah. And there's a lot to say about that. First of all, I think if you haven't worked and studied at the same time while maintaining one thing to keep your sanity, such as the gym, it's so hard to understand. I did that part time when I was in college, but I also did that after when I was studying for my medical college admissions test. So similar to studying, more hectic, but it's you're just so drained, especially if you have like a little bit of physical work.
yeah.
Like your body is tired, you want to come home, you want to sleep. So
Yeah.
mad props to both you and your wife, Joe. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want to mention is, you mentioned you had a lot of opportunities, but one of our previous guests and one of the individuals that I actually looked up to when I was a kid, Dre Baldwin, is he was a pro athlete, and he mentioned one story that really impacted me. He was mentioning that one day he luckily went to the cafeteria because he usually brings his own lunch, but he was wearing his basketball shorts and he trained every single day for basketball, dribbling drills, all that jazz, and posted it on YouTube. And one day he just goes to the caf. Individual approaches him and says, "Hey, are you a basketball player?" or something like that. And he's like, "How do you know I'm a basketball player? All this." "Oh, I just want to know. You seem like a good basketball player." They chat, and what ends up happening is he gets invited to go onto a college team from there. And the thing is, Joe, you're mentioning that you got opportunities, but the thing that Dre was mentioning is, and you control 1% of your life, but what you do with that 1% impacts everything. So he was ready for that opportunity because if he didn't train, he wouldn't have that confidence, that look that would make that person approach him. So as humble as it is to, just say that you were given a lot of opportunities, you were ready for those too, right?
Yeah. So the trying to not go crazy political on stuff by any means, but the one of the fundamental ideas in my head is the idea of you're never gonna you're never actually really everyone going to be born equal, right? You've
Sure.
got genetics at play, and if I have more money than you, and all kinds of different stuff. But kids don't choose their parents,
Huge.
so that's a rough one.
Yep.
And I believe that in an ideal world, we have the opportunity that says, um, if you want it, and it is success defined however you define it.
Hmm.
Hopefully, we can set up the right framework, structure, resources, etc., to allow you to get that. So,
Hmm.
whether it's college or whether it's starting a business or whether it's traveling the world and being a poet or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So, with my daughter, I have kind of three ideas in my head
Hmm.
as to kind of how I see like success in general. Um,
How do you
take
see
care.
success?
What's that?
How do you see success, Joe?
So this idea of, I think first off, you have to take care of your responsibilities,
Hmm.
and obviously that is directly impacted by the other two pieces. So one is so number two would be do as little harm to others as possible. So as much as you can, I like to see people help as opposed to hinder.
Huge.
So don't push people down to get up. And then number three would be living a life that you enjoy. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can live a life, and they kind of work backwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I put accountabilities first because I think a lot of times people would hear "live a life you enjoy" and go "cool," and then just run off. Right? Uh,
It's true.
yeah. Live a life that you enjoy to me would be, again, I mean, if you want a house, that means certain responsibilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have a family of six or one or none, right? That's different responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can live in a van with your dog and, beg for money or, work odd jobs here and there. And that's probably fine if that's what you want to do. I can't do that with a daughter and wanting to be a, semi-professional powerlifter and bodybuilder, and like those things don't align. So um,
100%.
I don't think it's fair to a kid to force them into this life of whatever crazy nonsense you decide or whatever. So again, I start off with responsibilities, even though it's technically geared towards really the second and third piece. But yeah, live a life that you enjoy. Do as little harm to others as you possibly can. Like I said, hopefully you help others as opposed to harm.
Mm-hmm.
But I think no matter what, like I contemplate things all the time. I'm an introvert,
Mm-hmm.
so I always like go back and rethink stuff and whatnot, and especially when I'm trying to come up with these kinds of principles that guide my life. And I go, well, I mean, if you apply for a job and you get it, you technically harmed somebody else because they didn't get the job,
Oh
right?
man.
So that, so that, so that's why I go with like you got to do the least amount of
True.
harm possible, right? So no
True.
matter what you do, it's gonna hurt or hinder. There's always a pro and a con to everything you do.
Sure. But Joe, speaking on that point, I think you should think about it net wise. I think in medicine, and I was thinking this when you mentioned this point, they say do no harm, right? And I'm not sure if that's where you got this initial principle from, but I think the way that we should look at it is do no net harm. For example, if you get a job and it cuts someone else from the opportunity, make sure that you do a damn good job so you can give back to the community in that way. And there's a couple of interesting points that you made. Do something that you want to enjoy and pick your own responsibilities and take care of them first. Have you heard of Ramit Sethi, I Will Teach You How to Be Rich?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So this guy, so smart, and he wrote a book on how to be rich. One of the main principles that is going to be was ingrained in my brain is he essentially told you whatever is important for you, and that hits your third point, like do what you want in life to enjoy it, put money into it, whether it's the garage gym, whether it's going out for food. But what he mentioned is if there are things that you don't like, don't put money in it. Like I'm not sure if you're a huge fan of coffee, Joe, but like for me, coffee doesn't make that big of a difference. I have a shout out to Nescafe. They have like this instant coffee. You pay $10 and it makes like, I don't even know, 100, 200 cups. Beauty. Sets me up right. And, compared to going to different stores where they charge you like $5 for a cup a day,
Yeah.
saves me so much money, and this is just such an amazing book. I definitely recommend you check it out. Obviously not sponsored or anything. I just love the guy's work. And yeah, it's you hit a lot of amazing principles, do no harm, fix your responsibilities, and do things that you want to do. And like, I guess, when did you have this reflection? Because a lot of people just coast through life and they don't even think about these principles, which in my opinion make a huge difference. When did this happen?
So I have a knack for memory. It's
Mm,
one of the things that serves me really well in what I do in my job and stuff.
hmm.
And like short-term memory typically is terrible. If you tell me something like, "Hey, you need to pick up milk," I go, "Okay," and if I don't write it down, it is gone. Like there's no recollection that ever happened. My
Right.
mom will look at me at times and go, "I told you to do," and I go, "Sure, okay. I believe that you told me that. I do not remember that you told me that." But long-term memory, even for like inconsequential items,
Yeah.
I just retain. But especially there are moments that stick in my brain that kind of define certain understandings.
Hmm.
So things about religion and faith and politics and all kinds of stuff. So one of the pieces, so the success piece, I had so the company that I worked for like 9 years before they got bought out, right? We did a lot of diversity and inclusion discussion. So we had a D&I council. We did annual events and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And I helped do a lot of the metrics and reporting around those discussions.
Right.
And our CEO was super bought in, he thought the whole generational diversity piece was a key aspect in understanding how we are successful over the years instead of just now. Gender diversity at all levels, right?
Huge.
And all kinds of stuff, right? You make better decisions when you have more diverse people in that pot as opposed to five of the same people, right?
Absolutely.
So he gave a speech at one point to the populace, the whole group of employees, and he was talking about his son. So
Mm.
he's I think tail end of like Generation X, and then his son is probably like 25 now. So
$25.
he's talking about his son being in college,
Hmm.
and how, and this was like I said a few years ago, son being in college and how um, he had picked all of his classes to be afternoon classes, and
Right.
he had done that so then that way in the morning he could go fishing every day with his roommate. So he was going fishing every morning, coming back, taking a quick rest, and then going out and then going to class. And Mark was the CEO. His name. He's like he said he's talking to his wife about it and saying this doesn't make any sense. I mean, he could get so much more done, blah, 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 and all this other things. And
Yeah.
then his wife says, "Well, but what are your goals with him at college?" He says, "Well, he should learn, and he should grow, and he should get an education." He says, "So is he doing that?" I guess. He's like, so he's figuring out how to do those things on his own terms, not on yours.
Mm.
And he goes, all right, I was wrong. So that's part of the puzzle. The second piece, which is where I come in, is he says, um, you know, he says, I forget that millennials will tend to cut up success and then, personal life, like you can achieve in both fashions, right? So you can be you can be a success as you reach for the stars in whatever profession you're in, but you can also, fish and enjoy time with friends and whatever. And so we came back to the office, and my boss was the head of HR. So he reports directly to the CEO. And
Hmm.
I know Mark. I know Mark really well, the CEO. But I had a conversation with my boss first. I said, so I have a comment on what Mark said. He goes, okay. I said, so Mark is still looking at the world, even for his son, through his own lens. So he is talking about how you can have success, right? And personal life. I said, as a millennial, those things are one and the same typically.
Hmm.
I said, personally, as a millennial and most that I talk to, we don't see work as its own thing and life as its own thing and friends as its own thing and the gym as its own thing and whatever. We
So
actually
important.
have a better understanding of the fact that you only have 24 hours in a day and you only have so much days in the week, in the month, in the year, in your life. And so no matter how you spend it, you're spending it.
Hmm.
And so you better make that count, and you better be successful as a human being as a whole, as opposed to chasing this concept that further up the corporate ladder equals success and work,
Hmm.
and more time spent with family equals success. Like, and you have these opposing, dichotomies that don't really work.
Hmm.
Instead, it's defining, well, for me, right, I want to be able to spend 6 hours a day with my daughter and 4 hours at work and 2 hours in the gym, or, whatever, right?
Hmm.
So you were kind of talking earlier, the guy talking about how to
We'll
live
teach
with,
you how to be rich.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that idea that you have limited resources, right?
Yep.
No matter what you're talking about, and
No matter how
especially,
much money you have.
yeah, Jeff Bezos doesn't have 25 hours in the day, right? He's still got 24 hours, even though he's got untold billions of dollars.
That is a
He's
future idea for Amazon, though, eh?
he just petition to change the clock for just him. He could probably make it happen, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But
included in the Amazon Prime, eh?
yeah, there
Love
you
it.
go. So, but yeah, so I told him, I'm like, you can't, especially not with the younger generations. I don't think that you can say success is defined by, essentially your job title or how much you make it work. It is and that's why there's these discrepancies around like work from home opportunities and all this other stuff, right? They want to say, well, when I'm working, I'm working, and when I'm at home, I'm at home, and when
Mm.
and I said, those lines are so blurred for us. We grew up in a world where we had, our phones and they were always on, and we had
Hmm.
access to all the information, and we were expected to go to school but also work at the same time while still go out with friends. And I
Yeah.
said, we don't, the idea that you have a time slot for something is just a little wacky.
Yep.
And so he actually went back to the CEO and had that conversation and told him, like, you're right, but in your own view, you got to remember to think about it. If you're talking about your son and what your son's trying to do, you got to talk about it from your son's actual point of view and understand that, different views, different lenses, etc. Because again, I mean, it's not that my definition of success is anybody else's, and it shouldn't be.
Right.
But yeah, so that's that conversation, that realization. I don't like, I think I had it in the back of my head, but until I had to formulate it and put it in front of him to say, like, you're wrong, right? It didn't exactly manifest into this idea of
Understanding.
defining your own success and life as a whole, and then how that then backpedals into that idea of the doing no harm and the taking care of your responsibilities and stuff. I think the responsibilities piece has just always been for me. I always worked, like, I had odd jobs where I made money here and there when I was 13, right? Picking up $20 here and $10 there and whatever. And I grew up in upper middle class is probably accurate, but the idea that my parents' money was my money was never the idea.
Right.
They would always help me do everything I needed to, and I had a lot of what I wanted. But there's always expectations that I was going to do my homework and be a nice person and help around the house, and I would have a job to make my own money, and the whole
Right.
deal. So that responsibilities piece has just kind of always been there, tied into it as well. The do no harm one, I don't
Before we
know.
get started on that one, Joe, I just want to take a moment to shout out your boss. Like, just the ability for a boss to understand at that level is huge. And I mention that because a lot of bosses, they have a lot to deal with. And like when it comes to things that may seem minute, considering, if they run an organization, they just don't consider it. So huge shout out to that.
Yeah, our CEO was awesome. He's unfortunately not with us anymore. He's at a different company. But the boss, the phone call I took right before this was with the one that I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Still the head of HR. We have a really, really good working relationship because he specifically picked me to be in that role because of the things I do, because I don't tell him what he wants to hear. I tell him what he needs to hear.
Huge.
There have been multiple times where he's asked me like, "Hey, I want to do X," and I go, "Okay, let me think about it." So I do my research and I come back and I go, "So X is, I mean, it's nice, it's pretty, it'll look good, everyone will give you a high five,
Mhm.
but it's not going to fix what you're trying to fix."
Mm.
So the a fundamental phrase for me that I ask probably at least several times a week is actually on my resume for my cover letter. Is the phrase? It's what are you trying to accomplish? So what is your goal? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to get more of, less of, change? Whatever it might be.
Right.
People often jump to solutions, so they come up and they go, like in HR, it's always, oh, I want this new benefit,
Yeah.
or it's in personal stuff, in gym stuff, right? It's I want to lose 30 pounds, right? And I'll turn back like with the weight loss one, and I go, so let me try this again. I'm assuming you don't want to lose 30 pounds. Like that's not your only goal. Your goal is to look better, right? And they go, yeah. And I go, so you want to look good naked, right? And they, yeah. Okay, cool. So because if you just want to lose 30 pounds, like we can cut off your leg and then we're done, right? Like there's 30 pounds, move on. That might even be 40 or 50 or whatever. And then they, a lot of times they're like, whoa, but, and I go, okay, I know that's a little facetious and a little, over the top, but the idea of we need to actually focus on the real goal to achieve what you want to do is important, because losing weight may not actually achieve the goal you're looking for. It may also steer the direction we go in, right out the gate, right? Like if you're a wrestler and you need to make a weight class, then losing weight is the goal, right?
Hmm.
Like it might be the only goal. But if your goal is simply to look better, that's a much different thing. And so we have obviously not that exact discussion, but that frame of discussions
Yeah.
all the time at work. What are you trying to accomplish? What story are you trying to tell? How are you trying to influence people? Myers-Briggs comes up all the time.
Yep.
We talk about, just who are we talking to? Who's the audience? What are we, whatever it might be. And so I very much so respect my boss's opinion on things, and just the ability that he's given me to be very vocal and very open, and
Real.
yeah, and knowing that there have been times where I've laid something out and he just goes, no. And that's it, right? And I go, okay, I lost that one. So that does happen. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes, back to our resource constraint concept, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes the answer is we need more. We need three more people, and
Hmm.
but the response is you're never going to get three more people.
Hmm.
So then the response back is, then we probably shouldn't do this thing, right? Yeah, so it's a really good place in terms of working with him and what I get to do and how I
Yeah.
change things. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Man, there's so much to uncover in that. Just the fact that you're being real. Let's talk about that, especially in the workplace. How many people do we have as yes men, and quote unquote, where they just say, yeah, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yep.
It's so unproductive. And although it feels good for a person's ego,
Yep.
like you mentioned earlier, Joe, that's not what you need, you
Yep.
know? And this is something that I've kind of went through as well. And I mean, obviously there's a time and place for it. Don't go into a job interview telling everyone they're doing their things wrong, right? But I mean, like, how do you be real? Because I value this as well, and this is something that I do as much as possible with friends at work. But how did you go about it? Like, what's the transition into, new employee to being 100% real, or is it just straight out the get go from you?
No, I think you're right. There's no way you can't walk in the door and go, "Hi, I'm Joe Gray. Your face is dumb," right? And go,
Well, Well, you can, just you won't get the job.
So yeah, no, I've always in all my jobs in the beginning, and I think you have to prove yourself. I think you
Mm,
have to walk in. I think you have to show you can put your head down, you can get stuff done, you can make things happen. And depending on the job, depending on the company, depending on whatever, that could be one big project. That could be 6 years. I mean, I don't have an exact time frame.
for sure.
But people need to know that when you voice something, you actually have some experience or some validity behind it. And I think that takes time with a lot of people. Back to the Myers-Briggs thing, different people are influenced in different
Right.
ways. So you need to know who you're talking to and what is their driving motivator, right?
Yeah.
So my wife, her current role, she works a lot with the management at her site, and we talk about some of the stuff sometimes where uh, you know like you said, a lot of people are yes man or yes ma'am, or they don't hone in their scope of how they're trying to pitch something. So they'll run into management and they'll go, "This is broken and this thing sucks and whatever." And if they do that every single day, then management at some point goes, "Well, everything to you is terrible, so I don't really care anymore," right?
Hmm.
So you got to pick and choose your battles. You got to know, what are they going to care about versus not. You got to know
Exactly.
how do you steer those people. You got to know. So like my boss is really good when he hears something multiple times from different people.
Mm,
I actually just read something the other day about that. It's got a legitimate like psychological term to it. I forget what it is. They were talking about it when it comes to
is it the
like
mere
politics.
exposure effect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might have been it. Yeah. So you hear it from one, and then another, and then another, and then another,
Yeah.
and the more times you hear it, the more likely your brain says, "Oh, maybe that could be true," right?
Hmm.
So we would use that to our advantage sometimes and say, like, okay, I would get two or three of the directors on board and say, you guys all agree with me, right? Like this is clearly where we need to go. He's trying to go this way.
Hmm.
This is it. Yeah. Okay. So you take this piece and bring it up when you talk to him here, and then I'll take this piece when you talk here, and then you take here, and then in a month he'll have gone, Joe and Bob and Sue and Fred all said that. And a lot of times, like, then he'll bring it up in a meeting.
Mm,
Well, I've been thinking about doing this one thing, and all of us
yeah.
go, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea," right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of pieces to it, but in general, to answer your question, I think you have to prove yourself. I think you need some time. I think you need people to be able to believe in you. I mean,
Exactly.
there are people who have all the credentials and backgrounds and everything, and that I work with that have years of experience, and they open their mouth, and I still go, I'm going to double check everything you say, right?
Yep.
Like it just is what it is.
Yep.
And a lot of them are those yes mans, right? The
Hmm.
people who anytime you say, well, how would this look? And they go, oh, I can do it. And you're like, but yesterday you told me you were too busy to do anything. Like how I don't get it. So yeah. So there are definitely multiple pieces to that puzzle, but like I said, I've been with the company for like 9 years.
Yeah.
There were a lot of proving points for me to be able to accomplish different things, to be able to push the envelope. I was lucky that my boss before my current boss was the same way. Her and I started the training department together. So she had a lot of experience and I had none.
Hmm.
And she just started throwing stuff at me and I started making it work. And she either had a lot of confidence in me in the beginning or just figured this guy's either going to make it or break it.
Hmm.
And regardless, it worked. And learned an unbelievable amount from her in terms of, politics, because everything in the world is politics.
Everything.
Uh, you know, my buddy of mine and I always talk about everything is politics and everything is sales.
It is.
So knowing how you interact with people day to day.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing when to and when not to say things, how to say things, etc., can make a big difference. And that idea of, so your concept of an interview, that's a sale. You're trying to sell yourself, right?
I was just gonna say that, Joe. You're taking away my points.
Yeah, I mean, if you tried to, if you reached out to me for the podcast and you're like, hey, I do this dumb thing once a week where I talk to some people who I don't really like. Do you want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
I go, no, probably not. But if you do a good job and you present yourself well and your emails are friendly and all kinds of stuff, and you kind of get me on the hook a little bit and say, then I'm gonna look into it, right? Like I had never heard of you. I watched some of your podcasts and read this, listened to some stuff and went, this sounds cool. I like it. Let's do it. So yeah,
I appreciate that. First of all, thank you.
There are. Everything is sales, everything is politics. If you don't like that, then you're probably not going to have maybe you need to be that guy who lives with his dog in his van by the river that I talked about earlier. If you want to work with people and do anything, you gotta know how to understand all that stuff. So.
Yeah. And one funny point that I was listening to, I believe it was a conversation on Joe Rogan's podcast when he was having a talk with Kevin Hart about Dave Chappelle, and he was mentioning that Dave Chappelle is like not only like one of the goats of comedy, but he was mentioning that like he literally will not listen to anyone. Like he just drives around the country, like just pops up on like a random park and like sets up a show, does everything on his terms, and like that's kind of going back to even the principles that you mentioned earlier, Joe. It's like, do what you want to do. If you value that autonomy, go for it. There's definitely sacrifices for it, but that's what you got to do. And another point that I want to mention that I think is really cool is you mentioned that, you got to pick your battles. And that's super true. You can argue with everyone on everything, but having such, it's relatively negative because a lot of people aren't logical and they just feel the emotion behind your words. So if you keep coming, hey, that's wrong, hey, that's wrong, hey, that's wrong, in a way, you're kind of using that mere exposure effect of repetition. And that's being associated with you through classical conditioning. So even when a person sees you or hears your name, and I can't prove this because I haven't read the primary research on it, but it becomes a little bit associated with you. So next time you want to talk to them, you're literally giving them a feeling of negativity. Yep. But if you do this and then it returns results, they can see that, hey, this saying this, it makes me feel a little bit bad to know that, maybe the things that I was thinking isn't working out, but he delivers results and he wants me to get better. Yep. And that's a huge point. And with regards to politics, the thing I wanted to mention earlier, you remind me so much of one of our first interview, actually. He was a good friend of mine. His name's Jordan Skripnik. And, this guy was born in the San Francisco area, similar to close to you in Sacramento, I believe, around there. Not exactly, but, it's very analytical. You think about everything and you go forward with it. And it's a little bit different than me because I have more of an emotional aspect to it, but it's so interesting. And I feel like I learned so much just from talking with individuals like you and Jordan. So, let's kind of bring it back a little bit to the garage gym because I think we went into such an amazing segment right here, but like we haven't even got into the whole meat of the garage gym. I think the last thing we talked about was, you getting your bars and your weight.
So where do we want to go?
You know what? Tell me about your initial experience with the garage gym. Like, what was the first insight that you took and that you're like, holy moly, this is what I needed to be doing 10 years ago?
Yeah. So just simply the time savings and everything. So I mentioned my master's degree. When I was able to wake up at like, I think 5, roll out of bed, drink some stuff, head out, lift, shower, head into work, still get in early. So I was getting in at like 7 or 7:30 or something, finish work in time to then head home to then do my 2 hours of studying to then go to bed kind of thing and rinse and repeat. There was no way that was going to happen if I had to drive a half an hour back, right? Potentially wait for equipment and stuff like that. if someone was using the one or two racks or whatever, I mean, you're screwed. There's not a whole
Yeah.
lot you can do. You can't really back squat like out in the open by yourself without yeah. So
I,
um
I mean, Joe, let's just talk about this, okay? In so many gyms, there's one or two cages, if there's any. And even if there is no cage and there's just equipment, you have to wait for people to use the equipment. And I don't know about you, Joe, but like at my gyms, like this could take up to 30 minutes. And then you're trying to like alternate your schedule to, like maybe do chest press instead of bench because there's,
yep.
what is it, chest press Monday, bench press Mondays or something? I don't remember the day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I
It,
mean,
International Chest Day.
International Chest Day. I love it. So,
Yeah.
like there's so many benefits to this. We talked about time, but like, what's something that you picked up that you didn't even calculate that was just so good for you?
So
Big
the
question.
yeah, so the some of the cool stuff for me has been the fact that um, if your gym doesn't have something, it just doesn't have it. So like if I see someone using a trap bar or a safety squat bar or something different, and the if people don't know what those are, it's not important. It's just
Yeah,
different things that you could use at the gym. If
that
your
are
commercial gym,
fantastic.
yeah, if your commercial gym doesn't have it,
Your
they
hoop.
just, they just don't,
Yep.
right? I mean, it just doesn't have it. I can buy it. I can buy
Mm-hmm.
whatever I want. If I wanna listen to Metallica or to the Trolls soundtrack,
Mm-hmm.
I can do that, right? If I want to um, lift at 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, I can do that. If I want to, like lately, I've been doing 2 a days. So I lift
Wow.
right around lunch, and then I lift right like kind of after I clock out.
Wow.
And the awesome thing with that is I can split it up and fit it in between meetings and calls and different stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I can align it to what I'm trying to accomplish in the gym and
Mm-hmm.
everything. If I try to do that at a commercial gym, now I'm talking about half an hour each way, twice a day, which is just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to what else?
You know what? I'll mention one point that's kind of similar to what you mentioned. The one thing that I've really appreciated by having a garage gym, and I have nowhere as nice of a setup as you, Joe, is I can just go in and do one lift to
Yeah,
get one exercise in. But like when you consider the fact that you have to drive 20 minutes to the gym, maybe longer for some people, 20 minutes back, that's 40 minutes. So like just going in for a 5 minute, 10-minute lift session, it's just not worth your time.
yep.
So you
There
can't.
are there are a few guys that I've seen who their program has them do like say it's squat day, and they work from home,
Hmm.
so they'll go out at like 8 a.m. and they'll hit their first set of squats.
Hmm.
They'll go back, they'll work a little bit, they'll come back out at like 9, they'll do another set of squats, they'll go back in. So they're literally doing these micro sessions throughout the day, and so you end up with instead of trying to do, say, 5 by 5 in one session, they end up doing like 10 by 5 spread
Spread
out
out.
throughout the day. And there's all kinds of, I actually have a blog article coming out next week. So by the time this posts, it'll be a few weeks in the past.
Yeah.
Um, so every year I do, I don't know if you know the name Eric Creasy. He's a strength and conditioning coach,
Hmm.
and his focus anymore is on baseball. So
Right.
he's got two different facilities. I think he actually works with the New York Yankees.
Wow.
He's fantastic.
Yep.
If you want to know anything about shoulder anatomy, that guy's got it going on. How I found out about him was he used to write for T Nation years ago, back when I read them religiously, and he was always talking about various lifting stuff and this here. He had so much anatomy included in his articles that I had to kind of beef up on my anatomy to even understand what he was talking about, which was great. I'm still not fantastic at it, but I know a lot more than I did. He would do an annual article that was things I learned this year.
Mm.
So he would typically do like 10 things. And I loved it because it was him reflecting on the year and saying, this is the stuff that made the biggest impact on me. And it could be things that he relearned. It could
Mm-hmm.
be things that he unlearned. It could be
Mm-hmm.
things that was brand new. It could be things that he didn't necessarily like, but maybe it changed his perspective on something else, or right. There's no formula for it at all. Like there's no restrictive rules around how he wrote it, but just the idea of reflecting on the year as a whole,
Right.
being at the level that he was, and still being able to say, these are 10 things that I've added to my repertoire in some fashion. So for the last couple of years, I've done that myself on my blog, just kind of picked and choose a handful of things that stood out to me. And one this year is riding about 2 days. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
very long write up, but it's listing out like 4 or 5 kind of benefits and concepts that people maybe don't understand about 2 days typically,
Yeah.
and talking about how like spreading your workout into multiple pieces, if you can, specifically for someone at home, gives you you get a break in between sets, which is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. So you can have higher intensity and higher focus for
Yep.
each set, which is awesome. You can typically handle higher loads. You can handle higher volume. You
Mm-hmm.
can handle like all these different things that add up to more gains, which is fantastic,
Which is
as
huge.
well as maybe some of the other smaller, maybe kind of bro sciencey things
Yeah.
around like every time you send that signal to your body of produce muscle, you are becoming more insulin sensitive. You are shuttling nutrients to the muscle as opposed to fat.
Mm-hmm.
You're reminding your body, this is who we are and this is what we want to do. Like there's all this, 1% stuff that over the course of years
Yep.
makes a big difference.
Huge.
And so for me, it's also the idea of if I'm chasing kind of two tails, one being powerlifting and one bodybuilding, I'm able to split my workouts into the two realms and then focus specifically on the intent of that workout for that specific goal.
That's
So,
huge.
but yeah, I mean, the time allotment, the equipment,
Joe, I'm gonna stop you here. Do you know why? Because I'm gonna ask you to shout out your blog right here. Because I feel like if we give any more information, there's no incentive to check out the amazing article. So please go ahead.
So the easiest way to find anything about me is just look up my kind of pseudonym on the internet, which is Gray Matter Lifting. So on Instagram, there's underscores. On I think the website, it just is. So on Google, since it's a pretty unique name, as long as you don't just do Gray Matter, you're good.
Mm,
So it's Gray, like my last name, Gray, Matter, Matter, and then
right.
lift. So, and you'll find my YouTube, my Instagram, my probably some details about the competition, my blog, interviews and articles that I've done with Garage Gym Life magazine and a bunch of others. So, yeah.
That's huge. So, let's talk about the garage gym competition.
Okay. So this year was year 3.
Hmm.
So we're moving on year 4 for 2021. It is a once a year right now, once a
Hmm.
year annual virtual powerlifting competition for people who compete or train, lift, etc., in their own personal home gyms.
Mm,
So when we say personal home gym or personal garage gym, we're talking about that whole community as a whole. So you could lift in your basement or your shed or your bedroom or your whatever you come up with. As long as it's not a commercial gym that you're paying dues to, as long as
mhm.
you own the equipment and it's really meant for like you and your friends or family kind of thing, you're probably good.
Right,
Uh,
right.
it takes place on Instagram. So again, virtual, and because it's by and for the garage gym lifter, we have a few nuances that are kind of unique to us as opposed to your typical powerlifting meets.
Mm.
So we still squat, bench, and deadlift. It's still a one rep max. So, but one of the from there we kind of differ a lot. So typically for a powerlifting competition, especially if it's face to face, you have to show up to a central
Yep.
location. You have weigh-ins. You
Hmm.
have call-outs. So you get put into a class based off of your
Hmm.
weight class. They tell you you're number 6, and so once number 5 gets called out, you need to get ready and you need to go out, and then you can hit your lift. You have 3 attempts at each lift. You have to maintain the balance of like being warm but not tired, and all these different. There's a lot going on.
For sure.
There's certain equipment requirements, and there's judges to check whether you hit depth on your squat or whether you
Yeah,
touch
yeah.
the bar and whatnot on a bench and all these other things. It is very much so a sport, right? So there's all
Absolutely.
these aspects tied to it. For us, we said, hey, the vast majority of us lifting in our garage probably don't have as much time to dedicate to something like that. And not
Yep.
necessarily the training aspect and leading up to it, but the simple idea of like, I'm not going to tell my wife and daughter, hey, I'll be back in 2 days, right? I'm going to go lift, right? Like that's
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do that. I give anyone who does, I don't judge you at all. That's just not my thing. And I know it's not for a lot of people. And so we said, okay, well, how can we do that differently? So one is, like I said, you get to lift out of your own place. So you
Yep.
don't have to do it at some centralized location, means no travel, no nothing. We also open up the competition for the whole week. So you can perform your lifts at any point throughout the week. So if
Wow.
you squat on Sunday and then bench on Tuesday and then deadlift on Thursday, some people do a mock meet. I did that this last year where you squat, bench, and deadlift all in one day. You could squat on Sunday, not like your numbers, and then squat again on Tuesday. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
As long as you perform your lifts, then combine them into one clip and upload by the end of the week. So start of the week, end of the week, as long as everything happens in that time frame, you're good.
That's
Yeah, so this it's very simple to enter. So this goes back to my instructional design background of as soon as you put barriers to entry, people drop out, right?
yeah.
Yeah. The one I use all the time is and I'm going to get the percentages a little bit wrong, but the case in point still stands. In countries where you have organ donation and you have to opt in, it's like a 20% participation rate. And countries where you have to opt out, it's like an 80% participation rate. And there's no huge difference in race, creed, color,
Yep.
religion, gender, age, none of that stuff. It is simply the fact that checking a box is just a huge mental barrier to people.
Yep.
So knowing that that is a good thing that most people actually want to do and participate in to help other people, and they still don't do it. I try and keep as much as we do to be as simple as possible.
That's
Um,
huge. And I
so
mean, people are always looking for that path of least resistance. And I think
yeah,
that anecdote that you gave is completely true.
yeah.
So one thing I want to just mention to the viewers and ask you, Joe, is what date can they expect this week competition to go on?
Yeah, so it's normally the middle of May. It almost always starts like right around Mother's Day.
Hmm.
Um, I guess I should clarify. Mother's Day in the U.S. I don't know if Mother's Day is different in other countries or anything like that. So Mother's Day in the U.S. So it's somewhere around like the 15th of May.
Okay.
We normally start on like the Saturday, and then you have all the way until the following Sunday. So you actually have like it works out to be like 9 days ish.
Yeah.
So it gives you 2 full weekends to get in. We're really lenient on if you're in other countries. So if you happen to lift on Saturday, but it's Saturday in Asia and it's
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
Friday in the US, it doesn't matter. Like it's not a huge deal.
Yeah.
So middle of May through Instagram, the entry is super easy. It's literally upload your video with all 3 lifts, tag or use the hashtag Garage Gym Competition, so all one word, and then you enter your details in a really basic. We're using Jot form this year, so something you can do off your phone. So you should be able to record with your phone, upload with your phone, tag it, and then click the link in our bio to go to that form and enter in your details. The basic details are, Instagram account, what did you lift, are you a male or female, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then this last year we had some extra details, location and things like that. We like to do some reporting on the back end to help people see, like, where is everybody from? How do you stack up? We can look at what are the strongest, states or the strongest countries, and then we're looking at asking some more questions this year, but we're still working through that. But one of the other key things for us is, so I mentioned judges. So we don't have judges. Everything's on the honor system. And the reason why we can do the honor system across the board is 2 reasons. One, I'm sure you've been on the internet before and see how harsh people can be. So if you happen to post something and they're like, that is not a squat, like that's not a squat, you're gonna get called out. So, and I'm not using that as like a positive or a negative, just that's the way the world works. People will harp on you if you do something that isn't kosher. Especially in something as fun and enticing as this. So most people aren't going to do anything too egregious in terms of the typical powerlifting rules. And then the other one is almost all of our prizes get handed out in what we call an open raffle. So if you mentioned before that my squat might be equal to your total, right? That's okay. We would have the exact same chance of winning almost everything up for grabs, regardless. So
we had competition.
Yeah. So we had this year we had like 40 kids under 16, I think, like that enter. So we have my daughter entered. She's 3. She had a 49-pound total. We had another 3-year-old. Yeah, she's awesome. We had some 5-year-olds and some 8-year-olds and stuff. We had people whose spouses were like, "Oh, sure, I'll try it." I think they got them interested because they're like, "Hey, if you just lift and put it up, we could win stuff, right?" And then all of a sudden they're like, "That was actually kind of fun. It was cool lifting weights and, being a strong female or whatever, right?" And so, no matter what your total is, whether you're way at the top or way at the bottom, you have an equal chance of getting almost anything that we give up. So we put a few things aside just for the top athletes, so top totals and most improved and stuff. But it's the smallest percentage. So this last year we had $1,000 gift card to Rep Fitness. We had I don't know if you've ever seen the curved treadmills from Trueform. So we had those up for grabs.
Wow.
We had a barbell from Kabuki Strength, so they're Transformer bar. We had 2 power bars from Fringe Sport. We had a football bar from Edge Fitness Systems, all kinds of stuff. We had supplements and shirts and banners and tons of stuff. I think it was a little over $10,000 in prizes.
Huge.
At about 30-ish sponsors. And that ends up being a ton of people taking home stuff. Because like some of the companies gave out, so like I wear a mouth guard when I lift. Impact is the company. They gave out 10. So that's 10 people that went right there.
Huge.
John from GarageGyms.com, he gave out 10 shirts from his site. So yeah, tons of stuff, tons of options, tons of winning. And the best part is even if you walked away with nothing, even if you said no PRs, nothing, it was a terrible day. You still help me donate money to Special Olympics. So I donate.
Wow.
This last year, I donated the number I wrote down was a penny per pound lifted, but I capped it at $2,500. It's a good thing I did that because we blew up, and it would have been something like an $11,000 donation or something like that. So, but yeah, so I donated $2,500 to Special Olympics, and so everyone gets some warm fuzzies because they do some cool stuff. They get to lift in their own place on their own time. They get to see everybody else participate. The community is super supportive. People
Yep.
saying, awesome lift. That was awesome. Nice job. Oh, that's okay. You didn't get it this time. You'll get it next time. People loving the kids lifting and all kinds of stuff. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. It's an idea that came out of kind of nowhere and started with no real expectations that has grown into something really, really cool. So
Joe, that's man. Like one thing that I didn't even mention to you, Joe, is the fact that I'm actually volunteering right now as Special Olympics BC for British Columbia, since I'm in Vancouver, basketball coach. And I've never met a group of individuals so caring, so kind, so fun, and just, oh man, like I go into that gym when prior to COVID, because now it's, on hold because of that. But just the level of compassion these individuals bring, like I take away something new every single time. And, it's just amazing to hear that that's where the donations are going for your thing. I just want to talk about a couple of things for this, Joe. First of all, I couldn't find a Reddit community for this. Is there a Reddit community for this? Because there needs to be one where people are posting their pictures and joining. And, I'm going to get into a little bit of this after, but is there?
No. So what? So I have a council.
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about that a little bit more, which is a handful of people behind the scenes that help me kind of steer and direct and do everything. What we've talked about the last couple of years, and we doubled down on again this year, was we have a lot of opportunity to grow just in the Instagram realm. And so we want to nail that before we go outbound.
Sure.
So we could, with the way it's set up, with it being so simple, with you just entering your stuff in the form, we could very easily do Reddit submissions, YouTube submissions, Vimeo, Facebook, whatever, right? As long as you can upload a video, you could enter. But we really want to make sure we don't want to outgrow ourselves, and we don't want to put something out to a bunch of different communities without knowing that this one is working, fully functional, and doing what it's supposed to. I think once we hit the point where year to year we're not really making changes to the structure, to the rules, to the communications, whatever it might be, that's when we'll decide, okay, now it's time to take advantage of these other areas to make sure that it's we can continue to grow. But we have a lot of opportunities still to dig in further in the Instagram realm. So
for sure, quality over quantity. I love it, Joe. Yep. Love that analytical mindset still coming back. There's a couple of other things that I took away. First of all, like I need to get a Staples That Was Easy button. First of all, that's an amazing button, but like I need to just smash that right now. You made it so simple for people. Record whenever you want around the world. We're lenient, and a lot of people. This is one anecdote I took away, but a lot of people in the powerlifting community, like they do this because they want to compete. And a lot of competitions cost a lot of money. You have to take, your 2 days, you have to get a hotel, and that might not be financially feasible for some people. That might not be, time-wise or feasible for some people, and you're giving them an opportunity to continue. And, with the whole spring of, coronavirus lockdowns, pandemic, all that jazz that we haven't even talked about yet, a lot of people are in their homes now, and I really hope this gets a lot more traction. I want this to be like mainstream media kind of stuff because it's honestly amazing. Like just everything, single level, from the level of easiness to apply, the amazing donations you guys get, the fact that it's just such a supportive community, and that's one thing that I've noticed about the home gym community. It's everyone is so nice. Like you check out the forums on Reddit and like everyone is like, oh, that's awesome. And you just post something simple, like, I don't know, like your new setup or like even a pull-up bar. Everyone's like, wow,
Yeah,
sweet job, man. Keep it up.
yeah.
So I'm just like, honestly, like every single level from the donations to the simpleness, man, if you guys are listening to this, get a garage gym, sign up for this competition, and let your friends know because this is awesome from the start to the finish. And you know what? That's all I'm gonna say. Period.
So
So
yes,
good.
year one we had 80 people. Year two we had just over 200, and year three we had just over 1,200.
A little
So
bit of a jump.
yeah, a little, about 6x. Not bad. We expected an increase. I think we were aiming for about 500, and that was just monstrous.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of things last year that were in motion regardless of COVID. So I mentioned the council.
Hmm.
So this ties back to what we talked about earlier with diversity of thought and things like that.
Hmm.
So I know based off of what I've done, what I've read, etc., that you go further, faster, better with a diverse group working towards a similar goal, right?
Absolutely.
So I may have ideas and they may be good or they may be bad. But if I bring in other people, I get some consensus as to whether that's true or not. I
Hmm.
also get some people that help me make them come to life. I also get some people who come up with other ideas, things I never considered, the whole deal. So my council is, so I'm the chair,
Hmm.
and then I have three annual positions. So or maybe that's not the right term. Forever positions. So Adam from Garage Gym Lab is one. Jake from Garage Gym Experiment, and John, we call him JB from GarageGyms.com, is the third. So the three of them have huge networks, have a ton of outreach, have a bunch of influence and understanding within the garage gym community.
Hmm.
They have connections to the companies and the sponsors and all this other stuff. They bring a ton of information and knowledge and just everything we need there. And then the other three are a rotating annual position where we pick new people each year. And
Hmm.
so they are specifically from the community. So we already have all the people that are the garage gym, insert additional piece.
Yeah.
We need regular everyday people as well to make sure that we're one, keeping fresh eyes and fresh
Diversity.
minds and
Yep.
everything, but also to make sure that we're not steering the competition in a direction that doesn't actually fit the community itself. So last year I had TJ, Josh, and Emily. They were the first, so that was the first year for the council.
Hmm.
TJ has a background in, he works for a veterinarian. He's does a lot of their business management stuff and all kinds of things. I'm probably far underselling what he does. I think he's probably the backbone to doing a lot of what keeps that business going every day.
Mm.
And he was going to be in charge of local meetups.
Mm.
So setting up, like inviting, how do you invite your friends over and things like that. And then COVID happened and we went, yeah, we're not gonna do that. Like if you want to have a few people over, that's on you, but we're certainly not going to give you ways to help you to
Yep.
make that happen. So TJ pivoted. He was the one who got the True Form Runner connection and a bunch of other stuff. He brought in one of the prizes was a bed
Yep.
from perform a sleep. So the person who won got to pick whatever size bed they want. So they got a free
Wow.
Cal King perform a sleep bed.
Woo!
Yeah,
Let's
that's a game
go.
changer right there. So so TJ knocked it out of the park, even though it wasn't the thing he was supposed to be doing. He just
Yeah.
went, no big deal. Here we go. Let's make it happen. Josh did all of our graphics. So he designed our logo. He designed all of our communication flyers and everything like that. I know enough about Photoshop to be able to tinker and take here you gave me this, I can move it here or here, but creating from scratch, my analytical, logical brain, everything is squares and everything is lines. And I know it doesn't look good, but I legitimately cannot get outside of that box. Pun intended, right? Literally, it is not. I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to a diagonal line here and some dust things here, whatever, and I just go, that looks terrible. What am I doing? So Josh did a phenomenal job of just everything. He is. I think what I said before is he is frustratingly good at doing such a good job in something that I wish I could do but can't. But that also proves the purpose and point of the council, which
Yep.
is he has skills that I don't. And then Emily handled the data. So she set up what was the Google form for us to track it in a spreadsheet. So the first year I tracked everything. I literally opened up post by post and then typed it into an Excel spreadsheet. So I type in your username and then type in your lists. And I did that for all 80 people. In
Wow.
year two, for the 200 people, I had 10 people volunteer to essentially do the same thing. And then we went, okay, if we keep growing, this is just not
Not
sustainable.
feasible at all.
Emily came up with what we could do. And then like everything else, it evolves year to year, but that was immense. If we had tried to do it any other way, 1,200 would have just buried us in a manual, not to mention the errors and all kinds of
Oh yeah.
stuff.
I guess you guys could say that was your personal process, huh?
Yeah, yeah, there you go. So this year I have Bruce, who was a sponsor last year, actually. So he brings some really unique perspectives. Being a sponsor, being a home gym lifter, the whole deal. He works for a company and does a lot of marketing stuff and things like that. Eric, who he does some analysis stuff in his day job, so he's handling the data side this year. So trying to bring that process even more sustainable, trying to make sure that when we go year to year, the data kind of flows. So people can change their Instagram account names. That makes it really hard from a unique identifier perspective to tie what you did in year one to year six. If your Instagram name changed from Joe lifting to gray matter lifting to Joe gray matter lifting to, whatever. So trying to figure out that process. We allow parents to submit on behalf of their kids, so their kids don't have to have
I
an
saw that,
Instagram
yeah.
account. So making sure that we are tying it back to the account that has the video, but also not duplicating that unique identifier, so that way it doesn't look like we have two submissions for one person. So how do you handle that? It's probably a concatenation of username plus name or something, right? But again, I'm pretty good with data, but a lot of other people are better. So that's why I have somebody else.
Yep.
And then Chris is actually up in Canada. And
Chris.
he's our first non-US member, which is fun. Him and Eric are actually mods on Reddit with me. And Chris is a competitive powerlifter himself. He is in the military and all kinds of crazy stuff. And he is running the coaching and training side. So what we hope to be able to do, we started last year, but we want to do more of, is we have this huge, expansive knowledge of coaches and trainers and just athletes in general. How can we pick their brains to pass on some of that information to everyone else? So knowing that a large chunk of our lifters are kind of your mom and pops who are fitting in lifting here and there, but still maybe have goals to be bigger, stronger, faster, or whatever it might be. How can we splice and dice that information appropriate to them, tie it to the competition, and hopefully help them progress year to year to year? So,
Huge.
Yeah, the council has been awesome. I learn a lot from everybody. They have ideas around we could potentially turn it into a nonprofit and then raise funds through various means. So I talked about the data piece. So the discussion we're having a little bit now is do we start tiptoeing into a kind of big data realm and collect more information on our lifters to then be able to sell to sponsors? Do we have a pay to play motto for the sponsors where we say if you're at this tier, you need to give in this level of a prize, but you also pay $500 or whatever it is, and then that guarantees you X amount of posts and this, that, the other thing, whatever. So there's a lot of different things we're discussing, and again, the council not only comes up with those ideas, but then we all discuss and say, like, do we want to do that, right? In a world that is constantly fighting Google and Facebook and Twitter and whoever else for collecting their data, do we want to do that? I don't know.
Maybe keep it optional for the user to choose.
And so that's actually what we did last year. Was we said, here's the required stuff, and it's like 6 things. And then once you move on to page 2, it's all optional, and you can fill out what you want or not. So, and then there's constant evolution for all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And to figure out what do we want to do, how do we want this to work. One of the nice things is I never intended to make money off of any of it, and I still don't.
Yeah.
So it allows me to be a little pickier. If this was the only way that I made money, then I'd have to go with the thing that makes the most money.
For sure.
Instead, I can make sure that the competition stays focused on the mission and the vision of what we're trying to accomplish. Yeah, exactly. So bring the community together and help everyone be a little bit better year to year. So.
Absolutely. And just one thing to speak on the fact that, Joe's not trying to make money from this. I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, but you have a year plus of content online on your blog, and I'm not sure if it's on your YouTube video as well. Is it?
Yeah. You're talking about my reviews and stuff?
Yeah. So no affiliate marketing at all, which means that essentially whatever he reviews, he does not get paid for it. He doesn't get a kickback from the site. And this is just something that Joe's really passionate about. And I mean, I think that's what's kind of causing that exponential growth, right? Because people see it's real.
Yep. Yeah. So the other 3 guys I work with, so Jake, JB, and Adam, they all do affiliate links and stuff like that. And I think there's a teeter-totter balancing act when it comes to affiliate work and everything like that. I think they tend to walk it pretty well. I think some others maybe go too far in the one direction. So to be able to make the most amount of money through affiliate links, you have to put out the most amount of content. You have to pay the least amount for all of your stuff. And you have to handle as many things as possible, right? So if you put out a review every 4 days when you've handled a product for 2 days and you just slap it up there, and the shorter time period it takes for people to read the review or watch the review, et cetera, the more likely they are to finish it, to then get to the link that then has them buy it. Like there's all these potentially really actually negative qualities for a review that would actually help you sell more. And so what you see sometimes is these people who put out like it's like a one pager, and it essentially just copies the product information and then has a couple of pictures and is like, this is how you buy it. And they put up like 8 links to whatever it
Yeah.
is. And again, and they just handle an enormous amount of products because they're pinging anybody who sells anything. They're talking about every shoe that's ever come out,
Oh yeah.
anything that can tie in at all through Amazon or Rogue or whatever, they
Oh
do
yeah.
it.
I mean, anywhere in the world, right? Like for any
Yeah.
product or service too, because let's be honest here, Joe, no one's gonna take an affiliate link when they give, well, not no one, but the majority of people probably wouldn't take an affiliate link that gives kickbacks of like, let's say 10 to 20% and say, yeah, this product sucks. Because
Yeah.
they're kind of, they're taking themselves out of the affiliate game for new
Yep.
people. They're gonna see
Yep.
that. And the fact that who's gonna buy a product when you just said it's not good?
Yep. Yep. So flip that around, and Jake, Adam, and JB do a really good job of blending the idea that they only get things in their gym that they actually want to use, as opposed to just anything on the planet.
Right.
So Adam's very specific on what he brings in. It's only things that he plans to keep long term. JB will have some turnover and some stuff, but you kind of have to if you're going to review 10 dozen racks, right?
Absolutely.
You can only fit so many racks in a garage. And Jake tends to fill a void that the other two don't with some more gadgets and gizmos here and there in some place. But again, it's all stuff he uses and keeps and the whole deal. And again, they're specific on what they're looking to review, use, the whole deal. A lot of the reviews take them. JB's handled, like, no joke, I think 50 plus barbells, and it still takes him about a month. Yeah, seriously. His walls are covered in like gun racks for bars. So he's handled that many. He could probably write a review on a bar in a day, right?
Yeah.
He could pull it out of the package, feel the knurling, look at the components, spin it, load some plates, and go, yeah, I know what this is going to do. It still takes him at least probably a month, if not longer, to do a review on a bar. Adam, some of the things he's done have taken 6 months or more. So they're very detailed. So they're not just regurgitating the specific pieces. They're actually informing the reader more about what the product is, why it's good, why it's bad, why product specs maybe don't always translate into performance. So there's a lot of ways for bar companies to beef up what they're selling without it actually having a noticeable difference to the consumer.
Do you mind giving us one point about that? Like, what's one thing that people can look out for?
I'm not good at that.
Fair enough.
So I attempt to stay in my lane. So JB, him and I had a conversation at one point. So I did one barbell review. I reviewed Ohio bar that I have, and I just kind of talked about, how it's still together and, what it looks like after a year and things like that. When JB and I started talking more regularly, he started dropping a few notes about where bars are made and the difference between Taiwan and China and all these other things. And I went,
even the quality of steel, yeah.
And I just went, okay, I am out of my league here. Like, trying to put out a review on bars when I don't know anything that he's talking about. It's disingenuous to the reader for me to put something out and claim that I know anything that I'm talking about. In my opinion, right? So
you know what, though, I will respectfully counter that, and I will say one thing, though, because if you don't know all of these background things, you have one advantage that the others don't. You have the advantage of a regular layperson actually using that bar and how their experience is gonna be.
So I actually use my wife for that piece a lot of times. So
that's fair.
In a lot of my reviews, especially anymore in the last couple of years, I get my wife's perspectives a little bit and get her feedback. Do you like it? Do you not? Why? What's good? What's bad? which is really helpful. One, I'm 6 foot 240, and
Yep.
she 5'6", 140 or something like that. So
Hmm.
that's a huge difference.
Yep.
Male, female. I got much bigger hands. She's got smaller hands. I lift 500. She lifts 200. All these different things. And so, but just the general concept of I've done hours of research on things that don't matter to most
Yep.
people when it comes to gym equipment, and she just gets to hear me talk about it occasionally in the background, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm totally with you. I just know that, um, combined with the fact that, like, I have held maybe 6 or 7 bars in my gym over the time. And like I
So
said, GB
huge.
said 50 plus. It's just
Yep.
really hard for me to think that my opinion has much weight in that realm.
Hmm.
Um, I have no problem giving my opinion on other aspects of garage gym equipment, which is what I do. But yeah, specifically the barbell piece is just out of my hands. So garagegyms.com. So it's garage slash or hyphen or whatever gyms.com, and then Garage Gym Lab are the two that I go to if I was going to buy a bar, or I tell someone to how to find out about a bar or whatever. They're
Awesome.
they're the two. So,
We'll
but
throw
like I
that
said,
in the description.
yeah, they do a good job blending the affiliate link process with still providing quality content and information, and not only selling you something because they need to sell it.
Right.
So, and I think that is a hard line to walk.
Yeah.
Um, so it does, me not doing that at all does give me a different ability. So when
Mm.
I've told some companies before when they've reached out to me for stuff, I say, so you need to be careful. Like, I don't have to sell anything, so I don't have to be nice. So if you
Mm.
send me something and it sucks,
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
say it
tell
sucks.
everyone it sucks. Like, there's no holding back on this.
Yep.
I had a guy a year or two ago send me, um, it's this auto spotter system. So he's been making it since, like, literally like the 80s. His website
Is it for
looks
dumbbells?
no, he same thing. So you're probably thinking about the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
He made it before them. Uh,
Really?
yeah, so but his is not as refined,
Okay.
and he only sells it on his website. And
Okay.
his website looks like something I would have made in high school. In like no joke, it
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
like a blue background with like a couple of still images, like
Yeah.
just
Classic
randomly
HTML
placed.
coding back in the 2000s,
Yeah,
1990s.
yeah, it's really bad. So, and like the storefront's bad, everything's bad.
Hmm.
Um, so I told him, like, I dig into everything when I do a review. I'll talk about the business. I'll talk
Mm.
about the experience buying it as a customer. I'll talk about customer service.
Yeah.
I will learn as I go through using the product, and I'll share those experiences.
Mm.
If the product is hard to kind of get a control over, or learn, I'm going to note that, right? Like, and I think that's to your benefit as a business, both in terms of being able to either improve it or just be able to tell future customers it takes about 6 months to get the hang of this, or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
So what it does is it literally attaches to a bar, and
Yeah.
you pull these kind of grips down, and you can go, and as soon as you are done, or if you were to fail a rep, you let go, and it tensions real quick, and it's tensions on these
Wow.
toe ropes.
Huge.
And so the tow rope is attached to the top of your rack. Technically, you could attach it to like your ceiling or whatever. And so the idea is that now, especially if you're training at home, you can't, if you miss a lift, whether it's on purpose or maybe you tear a pec or you whatever, right? That bar is not going anywhere near you. You're good to
Mm.
go. The biggest downside is the fact that you have to wrap your fingers around it and hold it, which is odd in the first place. And
Right.
then two is the mental concept of letting go of the bar when it's in free space is just weird. Like it just is really weird. That is such a
That's what I was thinking.
ingrained process of don't let go of the bar, right? You're gonna die. To get over that is hard, and so I tried a few times, and I didn't like it, and
Mm,
I kept trying, and so I kept posting it on Instagram and saying like, I'm trying to figure out how I get over this, how do I break this mental barrier and whatnot. I kept having issues where it was getting hung up on one side versus the other, which then
right.
added to that concern. And he ended up emailing me back, and he's like, "You need to send it back. You're doing a disservice. You don't know what you're doing,"
Oh
and all
man.
this stuff. And so I told him, I said, "Okay, that's fine." And I paid for shipping to send it back, no problem, and
Wow.
put it back. And I didn't want any hard feelings.
Yeah.
Not that I needed him to be a buddy or anything. I mean, I haven't heard anything from him since.
Yeah.
Um, but and I put out a note on it and kind of shared my experiences in general. But yeah, I mean, what I said was,
Truth.
there could be some very strong applications here. If you lift by yourself and have no means of a spotter system, then that's a maybe good alternative. When he originally came out with the product was, like I said, back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't power racks and stuff prevalent from companies like Rogue and Titan and whoever else. So you had one of those Walmart benches, and that was
Mm-hmm.
it. So that was a very ingenious way to work around a home gym solution. That was a great idea. But now that we have that, now that we have strap safeties and spotter arms and all these other things that are very commonplace for power racks at home, and power racks in general are showing up in even non, hardcore lifter home gyms, it just doesn't serve as big of a purpose. Like he hasn't really adapted. Um, on top of that, it looks kind of funky. Like my wife
Yeah.
hated it. She was like, it looks like crap. The setup for the bar was annoying. You couldn't use it on all your bars, and there was just all these different hiccups that just didn't really play out. And so I mean, I laid all that out, and like I said, I mean, he wasn't happy about it, but
Mm,
I had no, I didn't have an incentive or need or anything to say it's great, give me your money. So,
yeah.
which is a nice place to be in. So,
And you know what? Like I feel like by you even saying this, it might actually help because the users are like, okay, there is this fault, but maybe like that's not that big of a deal for me. And I usually maybe even I don't know, bench press or squat with open hands, which I'm not sure if you should do, but anyways, you know,
yep,
and that was a genuine review. There's probably a lot of people commenting on Reddit or Twitter that they may not see. And like one idea, if the owner is listening, because I think it's a really cool concept, similar to like a seatbelt, where if the velocity just goes really quick compared to the previous second, just locks like that. I mean,
yep,
that would be a fantastic product.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the only unfortunate aspect that I'm a little bit sad to hear about, Joe, is like the fact that you have to pay for shipping. I think at least like I don't know. I feel like
He he said he'd refund me, to be fair. Like he
yeah,
he was going to, and I just told him, don't worry about it. You didn't get out of it what you wanted, so I don't expect you to handle like, to and from and the whole deal. So he sent it to me for free. He paid for shipping to me, so I paid to ship it back. I think it
mm,
all fit in a flat rate, so it was, I don't know, $8 or something like that or
okay,
whatever.
that's fair.
It wasn't like I paid $200 to send back some giant contraption or something. So yeah.
That's fair. Sorry, I usually think about like shipping with gym equipment being like $500. So I'm just like, okay, that's gonna be a bit
Yeah.
too steep.
No, it
Yeah,
worked out well. So
yeah. I mean, man, there's just so much to talk about. I think right now we're at 2 hours, which is honestly, I've had so much fun on this interview, Joe. But like, let's briefly talk about COVID's impact on, I guess, briefly on life, but more so in the home gym community and kind of where you see home gyms going in the future. Then I'll do 1 to 3 rapid fire questions. We'll go into your message for our audience, and we'll give you some time to shout out any links that you want.
Cool. Yeah. So whenever I post about COVID on Reddit or on my Instagram or something, I always do that. Like, have you guys heard about this thing, COVID? Like, and so I think most of us know what it is, what it's done, where it's impacted, etc. If for some reason your life isn't involved in gyms in any way, shape, or form, know that especially in the United States, it's hit or miss, but for the most part hit, that your gym is either non-functional at all or is greatly impacted in some way to where maybe you can only use certain equipment or they've moved equipment outside underneath tents or something to that extent. So here in California, I think we're about to hit another point where all the gyms get locked down again.
Mm.
So especially with something that's hard for someone to maintain regularity, or for people who use the gym as a mental aspect tool or anything, right? That inconsistency is really tough. If you're trying to make progress, if you squat 500 and you want to squat 600, taking weeks and months in between, not going to help you do that, right? So that's really rough for people. So we saw an immense amount of people in the like March, April, May timeframe of this year hop on board and say, all right, I need to have a backup plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then the discussion started, and people were like, "Oh, what's going to happen, etc." My response, whenever I would see people ask, in terms of like, what are people going to do with all this equipment when COVID is done? I think what you'll see is you'll see a couple of different camps. So you'll see one group of people who bought equipment because this happened, and they thought, "I have a ton of extra time, I'll work out." And then as soon as life goes back to normal, they'll forget they have the equipment because they won't have the time. They never really made a sustainable change in their life. And that stuff will end up on, Craigslist or Marketplace or whatever in 6 months.
Yep.
You'll have the group of people who bought it thinking home gym, same thing as commercial gym, just in my house, good to go, no problem. And then realize, man, I actually need the separation. I need the physical act of going somewhere, setting time aside to do this. I get interrupted by there's a sprinkler that's not working out front. So I go fix that during a rest period. And now my 2-minute rest period turned into an hour and a half rest period. And the whole thing went to crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the kids running in and out. You got your wife coming in and out, or your husband, or your dog, or your, whatever.
XYZ.
Yep. So you'll have these people who go, this isn't it. Like, I don't like this. And they'll offload their stuff. And then you'll have the people who go, holy crap, this is amazing. I don't know why I didn't do this beforehand. This is the best thing I've ever done. I'm saving so much time. I can buy whatever equipment I want. It's mine. I can do everything, right? It's the best. They'll double down, and they'll be looking for when those first two people sell off all their stuff to then add more. And then they'll do what I've done, and it'll go from a small corner in your garage to half the garage to, whatever. And then the fourth camp is people who will have a hybrid approach. So you'll have people who say, okay, I really like having stuff at home, but I miss some aspect of the commercial gym. So if you really like a CrossFit box, for instance, maybe it's the camaraderie or the competition aspect. Yep, the community. Same thing if you go to a really cool powerlifting gym or something like that. Maybe those gyms offer classes that you like. So maybe you like some yoga stuff or some conditioning things or whatever. Same thing, the community aspect. Maybe you like certain machines and you just don't have space at home. So maybe like you really like the leg press for leg day, or Maybe the gym's got this really cool back machine or something. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll keep a membership for the occasional once a week trip in
Right.
for bodybuilding purposes or whatever. Or maybe your hybrid approach is actually the flipped piece, which is the commercial gym is your mainstay, but you keep the home gym for weekend workouts, when friends come over, holidays, when things are busy, when the world shuts down again, and whatever it is, right? Maybe the home gym is your plan B instead of the other way around. But in general, that group has a hybrid approach that
Yep.
says these two different dichotomies actually work really well together. And I'm going to both have a home gym and a subscription somewhere else.
Huge.
So I think four groups, two of them are not going to stay. The other two are, just in slightly different ways. And so what we've seen is just a tremendous growth and interest and everything in everything home gym. So
Mm.
if you look at, we actually have some numbers that we're using for the competition around growth potential and stuff like that to sell to sponsors. But we're expecting to go from about 1,200 to a little over 2,000 competitors this year.
Wow.
Even if if things shut down again, we could be drastically underselling that number. You could very easily, I don't expect another six-fold increase. But I mean, you could be
Who knows?
looking at 3 or 4,000 or something like that instead. I don't know. We'll see. In our home gym, we had to pivot. So we used to do monthly AMAs and what we call targeted talks.
Mm.
So AMA is Ask Me Anything, where we'd bring in a member of the home gym community in some fashion. So Adam and Jake and JB, who I mentioned earlier, have done them. We've had Rep Fitness, so members of different actual companies come in and represent them, all kinds of things, as well as the targeted talks were once a month. We'd pick one topic and nerd out on them. So we'd talk about barbells, and that was it. That was the only thing you talk about. And we'd say, tell me what's a good bar, what's a bad bar, where should you get a bar, where shouldn't you get a bar, what specs should you look for, which ones matter, which ones don't, who should have an Olympic bar versus a power bar versus a whatever else, right?
Right.
So what does all this stuff mean? And so the idea was to have an open discussion to catalog all of that, and then we add it to our FAQ. So people who come in later and are looking for details on bars can find all that information. So instead of us as the moderators trying to generate all that content ourselves and write up the FAQ, we can have it build from community discussion. So those worked really well, and then COVID hit, and we had to put everything on pause because we had to just keep the wheels on. We went from a few 1,000 comments a week in our what we call our free talk to over 10,000 a week. And yeah, it was good, but it was bad, right? So it was way too much at one time. And so we ended up realizing that a lot of it was dedicated to people looking for equipment.
Yep.
So we carved out another section specifically to in stock. So what's in stock and where. And so people can just post and say, hey, Rogue's got bars, hurry, go get them. Rep's got bars or benches, or hey, I found plates at XYZ, or whatever it might be. Those took off so much that some of the guys made bots to be able to post in stock updates from a lot of the top companies, and those post regularly, bars in stock, bars, plates in stock, bench in stock, whatever, and they provide links. All kinds of stuff. And so we were up around 10,000 comments in both the free talk and the in stock every single week. So they refresh every Friday. So the sub was just bumping. As of the last few, maybe month and a half or 2 months, I think it was about October, we dropped down to where we were about 2,000 a piece, which is,
Okay.
I mean, still a lot, but you could tell the vast majority of people who probably needed the support out the gate got the support that they needed to then set up their gym and then kind of move on.
Right.
But we are transitioning for 2021. We're bringing back AMAs and the targeted talks. We're just doing them slightly differently. We used to pin them at the top. We'll do it in a different communication style. We're keeping both of the weekly in the stock for the current term. And at some point, we'll drop that stock when it doesn't seem like it really needs to be there anymore.
Right.
So since it was always put in place as a immediate need for COVID type stuff. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, we grew from, and we were organically growing pretty well, but we jumped from like 140 to over 200 subscribers in like a couple of months. It was a very, very steep incline.
And we're talking thousands.
Yeah. And so I put out something the other day as a moderator. I said, like, it took 4 years to hit like 100,000 or something like that. It took, or maybe it was like 40. It took another year and a half to hit 100. And then it took another less than a year to clear like another 120. So that like very and then kind of growth was just nuts. And so with that, we added a bunch more moderators. So the moderator team's a lot larger. The nice thing there is that means less work for each individual. We also got people from different time zones. So we have some people, across the pond as well as in Canada and things like that. So we have a broader spread of when moderators can review and approve everything.
Right.
Instead of us all waking up at 8 a.m. in the States and seeing everything posted from, England and stuff like that at night. And then us going, oh crap, we were waking up to like 50 or 60 posts a day and having to clear everything. And it was a ton of work. It's been a interesting change, but I think as a whole, the mod team's done a phenomenal job. The main mod is D'Amelio. He's been there since I started, and he brought me up, and then we brought up another guy, and then since then we've just continued to add. Some people have backgrounds in being mods and other subs. Some don't. Some are just home gym people. But everyone, as always, same thing with the council, unique perspectives, unique ideas, different thoughts, and the whole deal. So
that's huge.
Yeah, it's COVID has been interesting, especially so like the competition is a perfect example. You had a lot of people last year going, oh, this is a great idea for COVID. And I'm like, well, this is actually the third year. And they're like, oh, why'd you do it beforehand? I'm like, well, I've had a garage gym for 7 years. This was people lifted in their garage before COVID. Like it was a thing.
Yeah.
It may not have been as big of a thing, but it was a thing. And they're like, oh, okay. So yeah. And you saw a lot of people try and put out other virtual competitions. So there were so they did virtual competitions, and they didn't. So there's a couple of pieces to the puzzle. One is they're there for the short term.
Yep.
I always say we're here for the long term. We were born and raised in the garage gym community. For the garage gym community, we'll always be here. They are here until it's no longer their Band-Aid fix, and then they're moving on.
Yep.
The other piece is that they tried as hard as they could to make their competition be exactly like a powerlifting competition. So you had to record from certain angles. You had to weigh in. You had to do a video weigh-in of your weigh-in. You had to submit all those.
Too much work.
You had to pay to register to get involved. You had to, what else? The judges would review your submissions, at which point they could tell you, no, that was a bad lift or whatever,
Yep.
which would be terrible, especially from a virtual stance, because at least in competition, if you miss out on your first or second lift, you still have a third one to make up for it. At
Yep.
this point, you would have done all of your lifts and submitted, and then
No
they could
feedback.
none of them count, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was and because they do it where they review stuff and whatnot, they can only take so many people. So a
Yep.
lot of them were having like 20 lifters total. And I had one reach out like, hey, you guys had such huge participation. Like, how did that work? And I told them, like, I looked at what they did and I said, well, first off, you charge people. And I said, that's not a great entryway for a group of people who tends to be budget conscious. I
Mm.
said, people who lift out of their home, a lot of times the mindset is, should I spend $20 on entering your competition, or can I put that towards my next bar? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, that's already a barrier to entry. I said, you have to register, which is another piece to the puzzle. I said, we don't have to register for ours. I said, we have over $10,000 in, prizes. I said, you have like 1,000. I
Mm-hmm.
said, there's all these different pieces that, yeah, I mean, not everyone has to be the same. So I'm not trying to tell you to do what we do. In fact, I'd like it if you didn't.
Yeah.
But like, it should be, in my mind, pretty clear to see why yours gets different results than
Mm.
ours. And so, like I said, the good news is they're serving a purpose. The people who want that really specific powerlifting experience with judges and the whole
Yep.
deal, they can still get that. And for the people who just want to lift and enjoy lifting for the sake
Have
of
fun.
enjoying lifting, we've got that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, COVID has been interesting. Like I said, the just from me personally, the amount of people who have walked by my house and gone, "Oh man, I'm super jealous. Do you have a bar for sale?" And I'm like, "No, thanks though."
Man. Yeah.
So,
I mean, for those of us who haven't seen Joe's setup yet, because I hope that you go check it out. Like Joe's gym is just phenomenal. Like bars left, right, center. Like I think you have a GHD too, like a glute ham developer. Yeah,
yep.
it's and such. You had this one machine that was very interesting. It was you load up the plates, and then I think it was either a pull or a push, and then you can also do something else with it. I can't remember.
Is it the lever gym?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two companies that make it, at least in the States, Body Solid and then PowerTech. They're slightly different in their design. And what it is, I mean, it is specifically designed for a home gym environment.
Mm.
So it's got a like a pivot here, and then over here is the arms, right? And you
Mhm.
load up plates, and so you can adjust that pivot based off of the axis and where you load, and you can put a bench up to it, so you can do chest press, you can do incline, decline, shoulder press, you can do various machine rows, you can squat with it because it's got a bar that goes on it. You can do
Wow.
standing calf raises and all kinds of stuff, and it's also got a high pulley and a low pulley. So you can do lat pull downs and low rows and curls and tricep work and all kinds of stuff. It's a
That's a commercial
very,
gym in one.
it's pretty cool. Yeah. So what I typically tell people is you can't do that many things with one piece without having some trade-offs. If you're much over 6 feet, it doesn't really work. You can't fit in there very well. If you what else? There's some downsides where depending on the bench you have, you may get weird angles or weird starting positions because it's a leverage piece. You actually start in the bottom of the lift, so like your arms start down here for the bench instead of most people would start a bench here,
Right.
which means you're starting in kind of the more compromised shoulder and pec position, which means you have to use less weight, which turns into its own thing. And so there are
There's some things to consider.
yeah, there are potential downsides to it compared to like I have a buddy on Instagram who's got like a 1,200 square foot warehouse in Pennsylvania that's his
Oh
own,
man.
and he's got actual legit commercial gym pieces. He's got 3 different back machines and 2 different chest presses, and he's got a half rack that came from the Elite Fitness compound when they restructured, and he's got 3,000 pounds of Troy interlocking plates and all this other stuff. And if you don't know what any of those things mean, just know he's got like $40,000 worth of equipment or something like that in his gym. Legitimate, like he's got the paint that he did on the walls, like everything. You walk in, I think he even has key card access.
Wow.
He's got he did it. He did it really well, and it's awesome. So way
Shout
over
out
the
to him.
top. Yeah, way over the top in the best way imaginable. So,
That's
but
huge.
yeah, so that's the ultimate. But for those of us with a spare corner of the garage or whatever, there are companies who make pieces that get the job done.
Mhm.
Inspire is another really good company. They have a piece called the FT2, so it's a functional trainer. So
Right.
it's got cables, so you can do crossover work and rear delts and different things. It's got 2 cables in the back center and at the bottom, so you can do pull downs, rows, triceps, etc. And
Huge.
since it's 2 cables, it's like one at a time. You can also, there's some companies that make a piece that you can attach to that, so that way you don't have to do 2. You can do like a
Yep.
normal lat pull down bar. The bench hooks in and docks, and then it's got a Smith machine attached, so you can use a Smith machine for various pressing and
Yeah.
rows and whatever, deadlifts, squats. You can do.
Joe, I should have asked you what it doesn't have.
Yeah. It's got the leg attention or the leg extension and leg curl piece attaches to the cable, so you don't actually even need plates to do those movements.
Mm.
So it's got 2 stacks of plates. It's a powerhouse of a
Yep.
piece, especially when you consider space is king for a garage gym.
Oh yeah.
It's expensive. It's almost $5,000 for that piece. But if those are moved, if you're going to do it and you're going to really do it, and
Yep.
you want this to be your one and only, you probably only have a limited amount of space.
Yep.
So one of the things I've talked about over the years, people prioritize budget typically when they build their gym, and that's the first thing they think about. And so they go, oh, I need a cheap bar and a cheap this or whatever.
Yep.
And that's okay in the short term for some things. But if you're not at that point, if you're a little bit farther in your life, you've got some more, cash set aside, whatever it might be, or you really want to one and done this, you need to do your research and make sure that what you're trying to accomplish in your garage gym matches the items that you purchase, because space is just most of us, that's the key limiting factor. You can pick up a side gig and drive a Uber for a while and make some more money, right? You can sell some stuff on Etsy or whatever, or drop another hobby or eat some top ramen for 6 months and find money, right? Most of
Absolutely.
us can do that in some fashion.
You can make money if you want to.
But space, I haven't figured out how to make more space yet. Like that's not a thing. So you have to get more creative with your space, better with your space, etc. So storage options, these machines that can do more things at once, and all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah. No, I think that's a lot of amazing points, Joe. I think what we're going to do is I'm going to transition just to the rapid fire question before we go on to the next one, because I feel like if we were here, we would honestly probably talk for 8 hours, which I'd love to do. But I mean, I know you're busy. So maybe perhaps in another episode down the line after we get the garage gym on mainstream media.
Yeah, I like it.
So for this round, we're going to do around a minute max, probably 30 seconds, just rapid fire. And if you are not wanting to answer a question or if anything, no worries. We'll skip to another one. Sound good?
Yeah, you might have to cut me off because as you've seen, I talk. So
Will do, will do. I think there's a timer on the top left for us too. So if you want to
Oh,
time it.
yeah.
Yeah. So my first question for you is what is the most favorite product you either have or have reviewed and why within that 1 minute?
Um, can I do two?
Yeah.
Okay. So the number one item that I think is unique and specifically changed the way that we were able to lift in our garage, so me and my wife, is called a rickshaw.
Mm.
So it's similar to a trap bar in that it is. If you think of a rickshaw, like like the cart that they pull, right, with
Yep.
people in it, it has feet. You load the plates on. It's a box style, and you
Oh,
pick
I've
it
seen
up.
those.
And so what's awesome for me is I love to do weighted carries. So that's like a strongman move, right? I can
Mm-hmm.
take it out to the sidewalk. I can load up plates. Since it's on feet, the plates just 45 slide on without
Right.
anything. I don't have to worry about dinging up my plates. I love my plates. I don't want them to get beat up.
Because on
Uh,
the front, right? On the top of it. Yeah.
yeah, actually, it's on the sides.
Oh, on the sides. Okay.
So literally, like the feet are here, and then the post to load the plates is here, and your plate
Okay.
is like here above the ground.
Okay.
Um, so if you go on my Instagram, you'll see it at some point. I deadlift with it. I carry it. My wife does the same thing. So I even built my daughter a mini rickshaw because she kept
Huge.
trying to pick up ours,
And
and
it's too heavy.
so she's got this little one that's now it's purple. It was
That's awesome.
red, and then she lifted too much weight and it was going to fall apart. So
Yep.
I had to reinforce it, and then so now it's purple. So
Huge.
the rickshaw is fantastic, and then the lever gym I talked about, just the ability to do
So
so
much.
many things in one space is just awesome. Um, and it doesn't have
Absolutely.
to be the lever gym. It could be anything that fits that build. Like I said, the Inspire model would be the same thing.
The
Anything
value
that you
for space.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So my second question for you, Joe, is what is one thing that you wish you knew 10 years ago, whether about home gyms, life, or anything?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Um, that one's always tough.
It is. It is. It's easier to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good. Yeah, it's a very easy one to ask. What do I wish I knew 10 years ago? Um, I think maybe one of the key things, so this is hard for, yeah, let's go with this. Hard thing for me being analytical, being in my head, being introverted, etc. I overanalyze stuff like crazy. So I'm the guy who like I'm gonna buy a TV. I go on the AVS forums and I spend 3 weeks reading about all of the specific components and the this and the that and whatever. I know everything about TVs
Yeah.
to buy a TV and then done. Like I don't need that information for more than 6 seconds, right?
Yeah.
But I spent all this time. And I do that with so many things. I do that with my diet and my training and the way I spend money and whatever.
Hmm.
I'm getting better now, but I think the idea that I keep seeing lately, and I've kind of learned over the last couple of years, especially with my daughter, is there's never a perfect time to do everything. And if you keep waiting for the perfect time, for having all the information, for the whole deal, you're just going to never do something. So being able to sometimes take a plunge
Hmm.
and just, maybe it's a leap of faith or whatever, is probably not a bad idea.
Absolutely, man. Pull the trigger once the target pops up, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The two biggest things I ever did that on, one was my wife. So we dated for almost a year
Yep.
up in Pico, and then she had another semester left when I was done. And all logic would have said, okay, she's gonna move back home, and I'm gonna move back home, and we're not gonna see each other, and we're only been doing this for a year and whatever, and so we'll just call it right. That'll be it, and we'll just
Right.
go our separate ways. And I didn't. I don't know why. I don't know what exactly pushed me in that direction to say, screw it, let's see what this works. It was 6 months of long distance of me having to drive up to Chico every, other weekend and whatever, which is about an hour and a half from where I am, to make it work, to be able to see each other and the whole deal, and hating everything in between those, every other weekends. And
Mm-hmm.
but we did it, and it worked. And then the other one was buying our house. When we went to go buy the house, they said, "Hey, we really want someone to move in before." So they had moved out. They wanted someone to move in because there were squatters next door, so they didn't want the house to be empty. And so we moved into the house while going through the short sale process, which was super scary. It meant we gave up our apartment and all kinds of stuff. We moved
Wow.
into the house that we weren't necessarily going to get, and things could fall through, all because we really wanted this house. And it worked. We got it. If I went back and tried to lay out the logical reasons why I would do those two things, I would tell myself not to do those two things. However, it certainly worked. So I think occasionally you got to put yourself out on the line, and you got to just say, we're going to do it, and then hope for the best. So.
Yeah. And I mean, exactly like you mentioned, Joe, like it's analysis paralysis if you go down the whole, research and all that. And then there's this one thing in psychology where essentially if there is too many options, it becomes super difficult. That's why in most, fancy restaurants, there's like 7 things on the menu and you pick from there because it's just easier to do it. And you're actually more content with your decision. Because like when you go through the details of, like, for example, the knurling or like where the steel is made or where X, Y, and Z, then you're like, okay, so many data points. How do I even calculate this? Now, how much value am I going to get space, et cetera, et cetera. But once, you got a good idea of it, and then your heart's in the right place, you go for it. And who knows, you might end up married to someone who's a power lifter or, home gym advocate,
That's fair. Yeah. She entered the competition this last year. She's aiming to be in the most improved category this year. So
huge. Well, I wish her luck. Take a chance.
We call that the Cheesecake Factory effect.
Is that right?
They have like 9,000 items on their menu, and no one ever knows what they want when they go there. So half the time you just end up ordering something that you're comfortable with. You're like, I guess I'll get a burrito, right?
Oh my God.
Factory, right? You get the burrito, Cheesecake Factory, or you get the chicken and rice, or whatever boring thing, because you're just like, I literally can't choose between these 9,000 things. So
it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think I actually went to the Cheesecake Factory when I visited San Francisco, and I believe they had like an Oreo or like a Ferrero Rocher one. It's like, yep, there's way too many options. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
Their menu is literally like this. It's ridiculous.
It's thick. It's thick. Joe, for the last question, I have one question. So, other than yourself, who do you think is the most amazing YouTuber? And let's make it a little bit more specific. With that said, like not like, like the top tier people, like for example, Coop and all that, but like who do you think would be someone who's underappreciated that should get more viewers or subscribers?
Underappreciated.
Another toughie.
Yeah. So I work regularly with John Greaves. So he's I think it's technically John Greaves III. He's the owner, CEO, etc., behind Garage Gym Life Media. So he does a quarterly magazine for the home gym community as a whole. It's everything from programming options to equipment reviews to interviews with companies and different stuff. I've written for them for him a handful of times. Some of my reviews are there. He's been very supportive of me since way before anyone should have. That's one of the things that I like about a lot of the guys I work with is, like, if you look at my Instagram, I think I have like 3,500 followers. There's no reason why, like, a girl shows a picture of her butt and she gets like 10,000 followers, right? So me having 3,500 says literally nothing about me, right? Like, I have no reason for anyone to put any weight into me from a follower stance. these companies and these people who support me, who I guess see beyond that follower stance and see how influential I can be, from being transparent and honest and all kinds of stuff, are the ones who, I mean, I want to give them as much as I can. And John was there from a very early stage. As soon as I started putting out the 1+ year reviews, he followed up with me and said, "Hey, this is awesome. Like, you're clearly attacking something in the market that doesn't exist. And you're not doing the affiliate links, and you're just doing it differently.
Keeping it real.
I want you to be a part of this. Do you want to write for us?" I said, "Sure, of course." And that's, like I said, that's not to disparage in the other guys.
For sure.
Adam interviewed me really early on. I think it still is his Facebook like header image has a picture of my gym with 2 other guys.
Oh yeah.
So I think I was either the first or second person he interviewed for his garage gym spotlights. So Adam was there really early on as well. But John's probably, for someone who does as much as he does, as active as he is, as different as he is in what he's trying to accomplish, he probably doesn't have as much street cred, so to speak, as some of the other guys. I know the hard part is John doesn't really do any of the giveaways and things like that. He's very particular in only connecting with and using information from people who are in the garage gym space. So all of his writers for the magazine are garage gym athletes. So he doesn't have programs written by the top coach, but for a home gym person, stuff like that. So, so John's a really good guy. We text on a regular basis. Yeah, good guy. So,
yeah, sounds like a great person to bring on to here too.
I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. Very, very interesting past. He's got military experience.
Wow.
He works, I think, like night shift or graveyard shift or whatever. So then that way he can do what he does with the magazine and everything, trying to build a brand and make money and the whole deal. And his family helps him with it, and all kinds of things. So,
yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely got to follow up with you off air about that one. So Joe, we're reaching the closing of our show, which I've honestly enjoyed this really greatly. So thank you for being here.
Of course.
What is your one message to the audience and any listeners or viewers of this program in any way that you want to take it?
Do we want it garage gym focused?
I want you however you like to take it.
Do you want me to do one garage gym and one life?
I want you to do one. Yeah, you got to pick. Those are where the analytical skills are going to help you out. But anything you want, anything that you're feeling.
Just in general, I guess I'd go back to those 3 key points that I said about, success in life. So for me, again, it's that idea of take care of your responsibilities. Whatever those responsibilities are, it's you can't. I don't think you can live a successful life if you're enjoying yourself, but you're leaving your family behind and your dog and your daughter and your whatever. If I'm off running around doing cool things, but they're suffering because of it, that's not okay. So take care of your responsibilities, live a life that you enjoy, do as little harm to others as you can. I think if you do those 3 things, you're going to have a pretty good time on this planet. So
hopefully other too, once we go to Mars from space, all that jazz.
Yeah, you'll help other people along the way. You'll stay true to yourself. You'll experience some cool things, right? I get frustrated when people try and put, like we talked earlier, success as this single defining idea. Like, oh, if you don't travel, what's wrong with you? And it's like, well, some people are happy where they are. That's okay. That's not a problem. You're only a bag boy at a grocery store. Maybe they freaking love that job, right? Maybe that paycheck is more than enough for them to do whatever they do. That's awesome, right? Do that forever if that's what you enjoy doing. whatever it is, like just don't squander and waste your time. And there's different things to accomplish. Like a good buddy of mine, his whole goal with working is to make money. That's
Mm,
it. Like he's like, if I made $1 million selling, horse supplements, or selling gym equipment or whatever, like he doesn't care, right? He's going to make money whatever he's doing.
right.
I don't think he's going to do anything shady or anything like that, because he's not a shady guy, but he's going to make money. But it's because he knows what his goal is and his, what he's trying to achieve with that aspect of
Right.
life. He doesn't have a perception that he's going to get some life fulfilling, aura from whatever he does in his day job. So he's going to make money, and then he's going to spend that money to do the things that he wants to do outside of work. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
I know that for me, if I did a job that I hated day in and day out, but it paid me really well, I wouldn't feel good. That would be soul sucking for me. So, but again, that goes back to each of us defining our own success. So, think about that for yourself. What does success look like? What are you trying to achieve? Where do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? That kind of stuff. And then you can start putting a plan in place to make that happen. And hopefully you're able to accomplish that. The sooner you start, kind of like we talked with the lifting thing, right?
Hmm.
If you start 10 years ago, you're better off than now. So, yeah, it's hard to be 50 and have 3 kids and a wife and not be happy with where you are and trying to
Yeah.
undo that. If you're there, I'm sorry. You can certainly do some stuff, but it's a lot easier to be 20 and to say, all right, this is what I want my life to look
Yep.
like. And even if you're wrong at 20 and you completely change at 22, that's fine. And even if you're wrong at 22 and you completely change at 25, that's fine, right? Like, I mean, you can keep reevaluating yourself and keep putting down different stakes. Like
It's a
I mentioned,
personal process.
yeah, like I mentioned, I thought I wanted to be a pilot, and then I wanted to be a programmer, and then I wanted whatever. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, as long as you just keep opening those opportunities that are put in front of you,
Yeah.
good.
Definitely. And we didn't get to go into it, but I'm sure you've taken something away from all of those things, whether it's becoming a pilot or all of this. And hopefully for next time, if we have an opportunity to go on, we can dive more deeply into that. But
Yeah.
life's a journey, ups
Yep.
and downs. Sometimes it goes even into the page, outside of the page, but there's always little things that you can take and
Yep.
throw into the next steps forward that you wouldn't even imagine. And
Yep.
I think that's the beauty of the experience here.
Yeah, I
Um,
do. With my background in like project management and stuff like that, we always do what's called a postmortem.
mhm,
At the end of a project, you review and say, okay, what went well, what didn't, what should we do differently next time, what should we continue doing next time, right? The whole deal. And you always get feedback from everyone involved, so all the
right.
stakeholders, the whole deal, and yourself, right? So because it's important to just write down what you think went well, what didn't, the whole deal.
Absolutely.
And so that concept carries over for me into life as a whole. Anytime I do anything, it's, well, did that actually do what I wanted it to do or not? Did I learn anything good or bad? Even in bad situations, working with jobs that I hated, I learned what I didn't want to do for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
Or so yep,
Yeah. And I think I'll just end off this section over here with just a little something that I heard. I was going to say quote, but I can't really remember it. They say that in success, you celebrate, but in failure, you ponder and you think and you learn and you reflect. And that's what actually drives us forward in life. You look at a lot of people who are super successful from the get go, born into super wealthy families, never had to really struggle. It's hard for them to understand certain things that other individuals who have had those hardships to go through. And it just makes individuals, I think the analogy that I like to give is, with regards to carbon can be used for lead, but in the pencil, but it could also be pressurized to make a beautiful diamond. And that pressure is what I'd like to relate to the struggle of life. And you can be lead that you use in a pencil with the same material, or you could be a beautiful diamond. And if we're talking just purely value wise, I'd probably go with the diamond.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
There's a quote from JFK, so
yep.
John F. Kennedy, and I'll get little pieces wrong, but it's the concept of like the Chinese use two strokes to write the word. I think it's disaster or something like that. And he says one stroke represents the chaos and turmoil. The other one represents the opportunity. And he says never miss out on the opportunity to grow, learn, and change from anything that happens. So,
Joe,
like I said, look it up and get the specifics. Yeah. It's in that realm. So
I love that. I'm gonna steal that from you if you don't mind, Joe.
Of course, it's not mine. So
hey, you're the first person who brought it to my attention. Yeah. So Joe, I think we're gonna close off now. I think that's a perfect place to end the show. So I guess right now you have an opportunity. Shout out whatever you want. Shout out whatever projects you got going on. And after the show, we're also gonna get the links. We're gonna throw it in the description. And yeah, floor is yours, my friend.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, the easiest way to find anything about me, Google search just gray matter lifting. You'll find all of my stuff. Anything on the internet that's from me is pretty much that. Anything that's not is my boring personal things. And I don't think you really care about my LinkedIn or anything like that because it's all just work. It's not as fun. Check out the Garage Gym competition. If you have a gym, if you're looking to set one up or you have one, you can check out Reddit, our home gym. Those are the three big things for me in my space for the gray matter piece is just like my personal aspect, the Reddit piece, and then the Garage Gym competition. So
that's beautiful. Well, Joe, I thank you very much for accepting my invitation to come on this show. It's been nothing but a pleasure talking to you. And we went through various facets of life. We went from the struggles, we went through the hardships, we went through you and your wife both working while studying and still lifting. I mean, that's commendable just on its own. It probably could have made its own show. Yeah. But, we talked about that. We talked about the home gym community, how COVID's impacting it. And we talked about your garage gym competition and the various facets of it, from donating money to Special Olympics to the community aspect of it, where not only is it a community where everyone's positive, but it's easy to get into. That was easy. It's honestly just for the community. That's the big vibes that I got from it. And yeah, Joe, I mean, honestly, I think we might have to have you back on because I've honestly think we just hit the front of the iceberg. But yeah, 100%. So my friend, thank you very much. And to the listeners and viewers of the Personal Process Podcast, thank you very much for tuning into another episode. And with that said, we are going to go to our outro. Hey everyone, I'm back after another amazing episode with another amazing guest. We hope we added value into your life so you could take the tips from this episode and fuel your process forward. If you enjoyed our episode today and think other friends or family members may also appreciate the lessons that our podcast brings, be sure to share us with them. Subscribe and rate our show so we know how we did. And always remember, trust the process.